Can I get a motion to accept the August 16, 2022 meeting minutes as reported? Moved by Dick. Second, Josh. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. First presentation for today is our 2023 capital budget recommendations with Brian and Ryan.
Brian's gonna take the lead and I'll jump in here.
We won't have.
Actually, let me just say this, if you don't mind.
Oh,
up front.
jeez.
Well, I
Tom?
just like to say that Brian has taken the bull by the horns with us and has done a great job with us. And I think it's awesome. It's one less thing on my plate. So good job,
Miss
Brian.
that next meeting when you go get appointed to something else.
We'll see, yeah.
We won't hassle you too much, Ben.
So this is the 2023 tentative capital improvement plan.
Going? I know.
Huh,
It was.
good start there, Brian.
Good plan. No, it's not him. It was. I tested it. Bring it here a minute.
Take two.
Did you see you tested it, Doug? I did, just not 10 minutes ago when it went.
Tested this morning, we're good.
There you go. I don't know what happened.
All right. So just so to note that this is a work in progress. So at the tentative budget's not due till November, so this is just for discussion input. So nothing set in stone. So big picture, this actually is the 5th annual 5-year capital plan. So it'd be interesting to go back 5 years and see how much is actually still on pace. I'm sure there's a lot of changes, but the idea is planning is better than not planning. Puts our investment in context, ensures important investments aren't forgotten, prevents emergency expenditures, and just consistent spending to stabilize the budget. So here's just a look at the last 5 years. 18, there's no capital budget. 2019 was about 222,000. 2020, 629, 21, 621. 2022, we're just over $1 million, and this year it's almost 1.4 million. So what makes up that 1.4 million? Looking buildings and grounds, looking to replace tractor, compact tractor, loader, and snow blower. There's a rough estimate, so it would be replacement. Emergency management would be replacing their SUV at 51,000, and real property would be updating their plotter. The plotter currently for their maps is almost 8 years old. The manufacturers say after 7 years they're pretty much obsolete, and it's used pretty regularly. So the idea would be to take this plotter from real property, move it over to trails, as they have a plotter that doesn't really work, but we're saving it. So going forward in 5 years, we turn it over from real property to trails. So we'd have 2 plotters that are sufficient for the county in case something happened to one. We're not relying just on real property in case there's a backup. So that's the pricing there. Parks and Rec would be replacing their 3/4 ton pickup truck and their 1.5 ton crew cab with a dump box. And they would be looking to add a UTV. And they need a trailer to haul it. And in 3 years, she was looking, her plan was to add a dump trailer to her fleet too. So we looked at that and said, why don't we suggest getting the dump trailer now to haul the UTV? So instead of 2 trailers, you have 1 trailer to do them both. The sheriff's department's looking to add update 2 snowmobiles to 2 newer snowmobiles. They're also the radar detectors in the cars. Some of them are starting to be obsolete on parts and fail. So the plan would be to replace 3, get on a plan to do 3 every year. So they're about $3,000 a piece. They would like to add ballistic shields for their sergeants, that price, and add an enclosed snowmobile trailer. They had one a couple years ago that got damaged in a windstorm, so they would be replacing that with a new 2 snowmobile enclosed trailer. Solid Waste is looking to get 2 new roll-off containers for their Krogan site and update their loader. The loader right there is on the right. You can see. Any good?
Yeah, Brian, the sheriff's department, what about the UTVs they've got? There's 2 up there that need replacement.
They just got them brand new.
They got the new ones.
This spring. Yep, and we're selling. Currently, we have a sale right now going for the used ones, which just shows you the market. So the Razors, I think they're 2012s that they're selling, and they were about 11,000 new. right now, the used one has a bad clutch and it's almost $7,000 bringing in at the auction. The other one's like $7,500. So they're almost bringing full value than what they were, you know what I mean? So it makes sense to turn over the equipment sooner. With the discounts and the deals you can get as a government agency, if you hold it for a few years, you can almost get your money right back out of it. So that's
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We bought those, I believe, in 2018 or 2012.
Yeah, I think so.
They got like 7,000 miles on, yeah, so they're highly used for a side-by-side. So here's highways makes up a big portion of it. So up on the top of the equipment, from the 2019 John Deere loader all the way down to the 2023 Western Star plow truck number 2 is what makes up our payments for 2023, which that amount is $442,091. Right, so the new equipment that we'd be adding on the county side would be a 1 dump truck, 2 snow plows, and a John Deere dozer. The reason that there's 2 snow plows, the plan was to do 1 every year, but 2021's truck never came due to the supply chain issues. So we finally just got the first plow truck this summer, and then the next one's coming in January, and the third one will be coming in summer of 23. So 21 didn't get the truck, so it delayed everything.
So Brian?
Yep.
Those are all new purchases. What happens to the existing equipment? Is there an expectation of revenue generated?
There is
to
on-
offset these costs?
On the main thing, the John Deere dozer is the main one. That 250,000 is the new price. That's the estimated on the resale to sell the old one is $100,000. So it'll make it 150. Will be the price of that.
You already did.
On that one, the snowplow truck, the trucks have been held on so long that there's not a lot of resale on some of the snowplow. Probably the snowplow that's going to be getting rid of is going to be sold to Osceola, town of Osceola. Same thing with if you're looking at the cat grader, we're buying that under chips. It's $300,000, which is unreal. The graders, there's no resale value hardly on a grader. So Tim's idea would be to offer it to a town in Lewis County at a fair market value. So it stays in the county, but we're buying it under chips, which is state money. So to give it to another town. So
There's no advantage to turning the grader over in a equipment plan like we have with some other things, because the resale value is so low. So we can use CHIPS money for that, because if you use CHIPS money, you have to keep it for 10 years. So that's why we want to use CHIPS money for that, because we really don't plan on cycling.
Same with the grader and the boom mower, there's no resale, so you're buying it and holding it out for 10 years. So that's stuff you make sense to put under a CHIPS plan. The idea, once this plan keeps going, so like the plow trucks and the dump truck, we plan on buying it, holding on to it for 6 years. And that 6 year, like the plow truck should bring over 50% of the value back. So instead of spending $306,000, you're only spending $153,000. And then your maintenance costs are a lot smaller than what they are right now. If you look at the maintenance budget for 23, it's going down because you're investing in new equipment, but obviously new equipment has a warranty and stuff like that, so it's not gonna break down.
Those anticipated revenues from sale of that stuff, is that gonna be in the budget?
It will be factored into the payment, yes.
It'll be put back into the capital account. So it'll net out, but we're not gonna recognize it probably as a revenue.
That's what I was wondering, if you're gonna recognize it as a revenue.
It'll just go back into the capital equipment fund balance probably.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we're, again, back to the new stuff. We're adding the 2 plow trucks in 23, a dump truck, and a dozer. Any questions on that? So I know there's a lot of information there. But, and the up top here just makes the payments. This is all the payments that we're on for 2023, which is $442,091 when you add the payment. But the total value of equipment we're adding to our fleet is $1.5 million, when you include chips and everything. So substantial. Here's just some of the stuff we got this in 2022. Excavator, that's the new plow truck on the bottom with the plow, without the plow. So it's a lot of nice stuff that's going to be really resourceful on the highway.
We like to keep our trucks orange, but because of the supply chain issues, we have started having a mix and match a little bit, so we do have one black.
And they actually say black is a better resale value too, so. Tim's looking at all that, you know, as long as it's safe for us and does what we need to, but you wanna think of the resale too. Capital projects, so any expenditure $10,000 or more, just expanding facilities, large scale rehab projects, so facilities or highways, engineering cost. So here's just the last, since 2018, we had a big one in 2019 with two big, large bridge projects, 6.3. 2022 was 1.3, and this year 2.8. The main reason is because of a parking lot project we're proposing and 2 box culverts, which you'll see more here. Right there. Just so you see that shows you some infrastructure. So PSB epoxy floor, $85,000 we're estimating. The RFP's out right now. See like that, but it makes sense to do that in March or February, March next year because we're outboarding the inmates to complete the HVAC project. So that makes sense to do it now if you're only outboarding inmates once. To redo the public safety building parking lot with engineer fees and everything like that, it's estimated about $1 million. Building codes is looking to add a software program to do their building permits electronically, so it can save the trip from coming into the office and stuff like that. They can pay online, so it's a pretty neat system. And planning would be able to use this software too. So it's not a one department software program; it's multiple departments. IT is looking to update our phone system. It's almost 15 years old. Parts are obsolete. Maintenance plans expensive. So Connor put together a nice package of what the savings it would be, but the initial rollout would be about $100,000. Boardroom, we're looking to revamp the technology here with the cameras and the microphones, looking around $40,000. And docular expansion just to help offices or departments go paperless is another $20,000. The final part of Singing Waters would be a pavilion, Jackie and our department like. So with some picnic tables and some outdoor grilling area, so we're estimating that right around 100,000, which is probably a little high, but I'd rather be a little high than too low and ask for more money. That's just the thought there. And real property, this is a big one, aerial imagery. So the last time Lewis County did an aerial flyover was 2008. So basically the real property, they're relying on New York State's aerial imagery, which just does a lot higher flyover, not as in-depth on Lewis County. So this proposal would be to do 2 flights, one in 2023 and then 3 years later, where it would focus more on the highly populated areas like the lakes, the Pond Park, or Branham, and villages like Laurel and other densely populated areas. So it give a better perspective of what's out there, would help the assessors know that instead of this vacant lot, there's actually a 2,000 square foot garage on there or something. So it actually it's 6 years, over 6 years, the payment is $64,000 a year. So it's almost just under $400,000 to do it. But a lot of departments in the county and also towns and villages would be able to access this data, which would help them out. And we really think by what you would see out there, it probably would make money by finding more properties that would change the assessment.
Brian,
Yes.
is that aerial by drones or is it by planes?
Planes.
Maybe Larry could be the pilot and save us some money.
Yeah. Hope you got a good camera.
Can you go back to the previous slide, Brian? So I just wanted to expand a little bit on a couple things here. So the PSP parking lot, that's a project that's kind of been on the back burner in Lewis County for quite some time. Jerry King used to, every year advocate that we need to do something. When they put that parking lot in, it's very rocky, kind of, bedrock. You hit bedrock very quickly in that area, and they didn't really put any storm drainage in. Not only that, but it's been 30 years, and all the curbs are crumbling, and the sidewalks don't look so good. So it would basically be a complete rebuild of that parking lot. And the expensive part is that we would put storm drainage in, which means we've got to dig into the rock and kind of what I would call do it right this time. So
You talked about rearranging some of the parking spots too to make it more safe for the officers and the corrections.
yeah, right now, you guys have all been up there at one time or another. And there really isn't distinguished parking between folks that are there for some disciplinary or some investigation or for visiting folks in jail or getting picked up from jail. There's really no distinguish between the parking lot for the public and the parking lot for our employees. And there have been instances in the past of, people knowing who drives what vehicle and, passing in the parking lot and whatnot. And we'd like to avoid that with some structural changes about who can park where. So that would be part of the project as well. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to, that's an expensive project, so I wanted to make sure we fully kind of explain what we're talking about.
That PSB parking lot, we did the one in PSS, that was environmental friendly, green parking lot and stuff.
Which we got considerable amount of money because we did it that way. We
Yeah.
saved like 300 grand doing it.
That's why I was wondering what this is, price is based on.
Well,
It's a rough estimate based on an engineering, what their engineering cost would be, so then you marked it up.
But not a green parking lot.
It's not determined at this point, yeah.
we've got to, sorry, Dave, we've got to hire an engineering
Yeah.
firm first, and maybe they can help guide us through some of the funding options. If there still is, an environmental facilities type grant for permeable pavement or something, then that's something that we should absolutely consider, but I'm not sure what's available
I don't need that. Because that was about $1 million, wasn't
before my
it?
time.
And then we took
Yeah,
off some of our.
And then we took off
Yeah.
300 grand.
Yeah.
And a lot of the swale was
Yeah.
covering the PSB as well, that we had to do because of that. So
Okay.
it might be a good option.
Ryan, why is it 6 payments over 6 years?
That's just how they do it. The company wants to do it because it's 2 flights, so they just break it down over 6 years instead of getting all their money up front. There's nothing we asked that too. Is there a better deal to be paid in full? And there's no better deal. They like to get their money over 6 years just to break it up, so that's recurring income. So and I think that Candy's still looking at the quote we got. There's one part we could take off, so I think it's gonna be closer to like 55,000. But that's the high end of the quote. We're just trying to narrow everything down. Just to do that.
Those IT expenditures are gonna get us to where the private sector is already a couple years ahead of us, like using soft phones, of course, going more paperless, the DocuWare expansion, all of that stuff is just, and that's how public sector is. We're always a couple years behind, professional services.
Right, it's IT's initiative, but it's a countywide thing, I mean, all
Right. Oh,
departments
yeah,
are
it's not
benefiting
just
too,
IT,
it's not, right, no,
yeah.
exactly, but it's just the kind of team pushing.
So just a note on the boardroom, we often get complaints, people can't hear in the back. Not only that, but we really haven't done a complete, the cameras are obsolete, we really need a system. People have started watching our live streams, which is great. So, yeah, so we need to kind of make a bit of an investment in our space here. So I was shocked that it was gonna be 40,000, but they've gotten multiple quotes and that's what it's coming in. So,
One came in at 100,000, so, yeah. Dick, do you have something else?
Yeah, I'll just show my age. What's a soft phone?
That's just the technology, basically, where you could use it, you don't even have to have a phone anymore, it could be right through your computer. So instead of having an actual phone on the desk, you could just answer it through your computer. You can have an app on your phone, so if they're calling your desk phone, if you're not at your desk, you can answer it through the app too. So it's always a lot of different technology there.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah, Connor can give you more details too if you. So then, highway capital projects, so.
Come a long way from a party line.
Yeah.
So the CHIPS, annual CHIPS funding from the state to Lewis County is about 2.85 million. The county's portion on the left, so road striping program, 75,000, that would be out of the county's funding. Bridge construction, there's 3 bridges that are ready to be built. They're just waiting on bridge federal funding to pay, and we'd be on hook for 5% of the cost. So those 3, the West Road, East Road, and Gulf Stream Bridge are all ready for construction. We're just waiting for them to be selected for the funding. And then the Wood Battle Road and the Marcy Road bridges are in design phase right now. So there's always something in the hopper. And then we're looking for the 2 box culverts, which you saw on the previous slide, would be about $1.2 million. So about 600,000 each box culvert to do. And then the CHIP spending plan, Tim and the highway department are looking to pay 4.4 miles on the High Market Road. And that would be recycle in place and then cold on top. They would like to seal 90 miles of roads, basically south of Lavo. He has a list in his office, but he's gonna put that many roads on there, or else it'd be, just so you know, the region. He's kind of paid north of Lavo this year, or seal it, and next year south. About 200,000 of guide rail replacement, and then bridge joint repairs would be Laura Street, Lions Falls Road, Greg Road, and Main Street, Fort Lyden. There's the rough estimates for those, but that, everything on the right would be covered under CHIPS.
So I think it's important to note that you'll see CHIPS at 2.85. Before this year, we've typically been around 2.3 to 2.4. That is reflective of New York State's portion of the $1 trillion infrastructure plan that the feds have passed. So the way it's getting passed through New York State in a lot of ways is through our CHIPS. So your towns should all be seeing about 10 to 15%, 20% more CHIPS funding because of the infrastructure program. So we'll get that over the next 10 years. So it's allowing us to do a little bit more.
Any other questions on this slide? And then how will it be paid for? Ryan?
So where am I?
So this chart is always
I know,
a little
getting-
confusing, but basically we still have several capital project funds, and capital equipment funds. So you guys that have been on the board for a while may recall a time when we had like 2 pages worth of capital equipment and project funds, because what we would do is we'd create an account for everything we wanted to save up for. So we had a highway replace the roof fund, and then we had a DSS siding fund. We have tried to get away from that and replace that with the capital plan. And so each year we're trying to condense those funds. And really what I'd like to see is a capital project fund, capital equipment fund, and then you refer to the 5-year plan that kind of guides where that fund goes. Anyhow, you'll see we zeroed out the highway building and DSS building. Those are the 2 accounts that I mentioned before. Those were zeroed out by the board earlier this year. We sent that money into the capital building project, HAR, at the bottom. See that $16 million is currently sitting in that account. However, by the end of, encumbered, meaning we know we have $16 million of expenses to go, because that's our capital project that's ongoing right now with the highway and DSS and all that. So those 2 accounts have been zeroed out, HAA and HAB. HAC, buildings and grounds, that is where we're basically the capital project account, and then HAD is the capital equipment account. So those are really the 2 main accounts that we're using at this time. As of a couple weeks ago, we had $1.5 million left in the capital projects account, HAC, buildings and grounds. We know we have $1 million of projects left. That is the HVAC project at the jail that we're still waiting on execution on that. So we know we've got encumbered another $1 million. That leaves us about $550,000 rolling into 2023. As Brian just pointed out, we've got $2.7 million worth of projects scheduled, not including CHIPS, right? This is our funding for 2023. What I'm suggesting is this. I'm suggesting that we transfer in, using tax dollars from the levy, $212,000. So we're taxing the taxpayers for $212,000, but we use fund balance for $2 million. And here's my argument. 2 of the projects are $1 million each, are really good one-time fund balance projects. The Box Road culverts is a big project. And in my mind, that's the kind of stuff that we should be doing with our excess sales tax and fund balance, our one-time infrastructure investments. So I would suggest that we use $1 million of fund balance for the Box Road or the West Road box culverts, and a second $1 million for the PSP parking lot. So 2 one-time expenses. We're not taking the extra money that we have and operationalizing it. We're not adding employees. We are making investments that are going to save the taxpayers for 30+ years if we do it right. So
The fund balance is actually tax money that's been generated from tax revenue. So technically, they've already been taxed, and we're just allocating that money to these projects.
bingo. Yep. Yes. But we're not going to hit him again.
Double tax.
We're not gonna hit him again. So that's what I would suggest, for 2023 is how we pay for those capital projects. For HAD equipment, you'll see that we're gonna have a balance going into 2022 of about $266,000 in that account. We're gonna need 767, so we'll put on the levy 500,000 to balance that. And could we again use fund balance for that as well? We could. The danger is, we need to have a consistent capital equipment and capital project funding, and I fear if you just zeroed those out for a few years and used fund balance, when we had to go back, if you can't use fund balance forever, you've now got to carve that money back out of the budget somehow, and I think it's more prudent to keep kind of going the way we're going. Because I don't think we're not gonna need a tax increase in 2023 anyway. So that's my logic on that. The data processing account, you'll see that we're gonna have about $200,000 left in it. Next year's phone project and some of the other things Connor wanted to do was $210,000. I would like to basically just balance that account and zero it out, and going forward, data processing, any IT projects or equipment will either be a project or an equipment. I don't know that we need a separate data processing capital line going forward. So my goal would be to zero that out.
You clean up all these spreadsheets, what's overfilled?
I don't know.
I
We'll make more, don't worry.
did take note of him saying that he's not gonna propose any tax increase.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure if that's breaking news, but we're pretty much gonna be fine.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
So I'll be watching that anyway.
I'm sure you all will. Capital cleanup, that's an account that we've kind of moved forward for, the cleanup of properties and whatnot. We've got 55,000 in it. We haven't done a whole lot with it. But remember, we just did a big deal with the LCDC for more, some of that ARPA funds, about $2 million that they're gonna be doing some property cleanup. So we are moving on that. Capital building account, as I mentioned, probably not by the end of 2023, but 2024, that account should be zeroed out as well, because we will have finished that project. Solid waste project account, that's where we put money in from the fund balance for them to borrow off of. They still have a little bit left, but they're probably gonna be in the hole a little bit too, because the scale house project was a bit more expensive than we had originally anticipated. ARPA projects, that's just where we're holding our ARPA funds. We have been spending them. We've spent about $500,000 to date, but you guys have been approving resolutions here and projects are moving, and that money will slowly, be drawn down as well. So basically, the big ask, I think the important thing is using the fund balance for the two large capital projects. It's not something we've traditionally done, but in this situation that we're in, I think it does make sense. So that's kind of what I would pitch.
Ryan, I hear little inklings, and I don't know if there's any political will behind it, about ARPA money that hasn't been expended. And because we're, like everybody else, we're not maybe as bad as the other ones. There's a lot of places that are just sitting on these funds, not doing anything, not sure what to do with them. The federal government coming in and taking some of that money back. Are you getting any indication?
No, in fact, they've gone the opposite direction. Any community that got less than $10 million, which is every community in this county, because the county only got 5, is off the hook completely. They're just considering anything under 10 million is pandemic relief. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to send in, receipts and everything to the treasury. So I think the opposite is true. And in terms of our ARPA spending, we are heads and tails in front of most counties. I mean, we had a plan right out of the gate. We've already signed MOUs. We're moving money. That by the end of the year, even in the next 3 months, will be drawn down. My wet guess is by about half. I mean, we're moving on some of the things that we're doing. So, and it's unwise to go back to your towns and villages that are maybe sitting on it, don't know what to do. At this point, they're sitting on money with a discount rate of 8%. Every month they don't spend it, inflation chomps into that 8%.
Right.
So they're getting a worse deal for their constituents every month they sit on. So they really should be moving. Anyway.
I'm thinking too about prior decades, because I get, I think most people in the community, they expect we're gonna not increase taxes, so why not decrease taxes? And we can point to this and say, we're making investments in the community right now, and a lot of this is because in decades prior, and I mean decades, thinking back years, we have not made the kinds of investments into our property that could be paying off dividends down the road, like, DSS building's a perfect example of that. We really hit the end of its useful life a while ago. We're making an investment which 20 years from now, we'll be able to look back on and say, that was a good thing that we did at that time, even though right now, those are big numbers that people see. Do you think that's a fair way of putting it for?
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's kind of you gotta think of our buildings and grounds similarly to how we're trying to think about our fleet of vehicles. Tim has been able, when I started, we had 5 mechanics working at the highway department. We're gonna be down to 2 or 3, I believe 2 actually, 2 mechanics. That means we've added 3 guys on the road. That means we're able to do more work for the taxpayers and less work just working on our own equipment. So I think the same thing will happen with buildings and grounds. When everything is new, and we don't have to constantly be running around chasing problems, we'll be able to put more resources towards serving the public. So I think that's, a wise investment. And as you point out, Ian, we really didn't have a choice anyway. When you can't only ride some of this stuff so far before you have to, we have to do some things.
But we're talking about a mindset shift, I think, for future years, that we're going to address these issues before they become a problem. And it'll save money in the long run.
And we are. I mean, the 5-year capital plan that we're now in year 5 of, we've done some really great projects.
Yeah.
And we've got planning and we're looking ahead. And, what I love to see is, we're doing the engineering one year so that we're prepared to do the project the next year. I mean, that is really thinking ahead and getting these things moving. So I think the board deserves a lot of credit. This board that's been here, the last 5 years and really rethinking about how we did capital. When I first started, it was something broke, bring it to the board, we argue about ways to fix it and how much to spend, Now we're trying to look ahead 5 years and plan. Andrew remembers.
And to be fair, though, it would never occur to me that it's cheaper to buy new equipment and sell it after a few years, because I think in terms of my beater of a Volkswagen, I can still squeak a few more years out of that thing, but maybe that's not how you should run your highway department.
Especially with the government discount too.
Exactly.
Like you're already got, you're not paying the taxes, we're not paying the federal and excess taxes, we're not paying the sales tax.
Yep.
So we're already had there, plus we get the discount on the net of that, so we're at an advantage versus a private operator. So that's basically, that's the presentation. We can talk through it. Any other questions or discussion?
I thought it was a good job. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I don't like it.
That's all right. Hey, the snowplow's coming out of Harrisville.
That's right.
Yeah. There you go, 3 of them.
Good point.
All right, now we'll move on to the dockets.
The first docket I have is authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and Chimera Integrations LLC for annual fire and alarm monitoring and inspections and installation of door security systems at the Glenfield School Complex for a total of $10,570 from August 2022 through July 2023.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing the reclassification in the Buildings and Grounds Department of the cleaner position, grade 4, $13.97 to $16.13 per hour, to the custodial position, which is grade 14, $17.28 to $20.23 per hour per the CSEA request.
I got it.
Go ahead.
So in our collective bargaining agreement with CSEA, they are allowed to bring forward 2 grade change requests every 12 months. They have not brought anything forward in quite a while officially. This is a request that they're making to bring the cleaners up to custodial workers. I'll have more on that in the finance and rules discussion where we're going to get more into personnel. It's not something that can wait. You know, my hope was that we just do it. I mean, it's September, I'm presenting budget, you know, over the next couple of months. I was hoping they could wait till January 1st, but the union has a right to bring things forward, and they have the right to have it heard by the board. So they're asking for this change now ahead of the 2023 budget. So it'll go through this committee, and then it'll be talked about more in depth at finance and boards.
Any other discussion on that?
I should say, I am recommending that we do this in the 2023 budget. The question is simply, do we want to do it now to honor the union request, or wait till January 1st?
What's the minimum wage rate?
13,
97?
13.25. I think so.
Okay, so there's.
This is, I think it is, this is
This
the
is
point.
some of that up.
This is.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Transferring funds in the county road accounts in the amount of $81,283 for equipment purchases from CHIPS funding.
Any discussion?
This is for last year, this is for 2022's capital, not 2023.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Opposition to New York State actions restricting Second Amendment rights.
Any discussion?
My only thought would be to ask the state to rescind the recent laws in the body of this resolution. It really doesn't ask them to do anything, it just points out the errors of the ways.
So I did prepare an additional resolution for the board to consider. Did we have that ready to
You
hear
said you
tonight?
were going to bring it up here today.
I
Yeah,
don't have copies with me, Joan.
okay.
Oh.
I can get copies for the board to consider. We did add some
Is
additional
that
language.
something that this board wants to do? I guess
I'd like
that's
to.
my question. Or if we could rather just stick with this one.
I would might as well ask them.
What's that?
We might as well ask them.
Is it on
We'll
your
look if they read it, but to be honest. You know, and this is something I've heard from a few constituents on asking what we're gonna do as a county. And you know, my view, if you can't accomplish it legislatively at the state level, your next solution is to solve it through the courts. And look, a couple of things that I've read about, like in Plattsburgh, they had to cancel one of their battle reenactments because if you interpret that law, one of the laws about carrying firearms, it made it impossible for them to even carry out a reenactment with older firearms. You know, that maybe they're not even being used, obviously, for any purpose, nefarious or otherwise, except for a battle reenactment. But they need to protect their own members. And this, I think, and then also the issues with parks. There was did you mention that, Larry, a prohibition on carrying firearms in New York State parks? Well, we have one of the largest parks in the lower 48 states in the Adirondacks. How do you interpret a law like that? And this is one of the ways that we pass laws in New York State. They throw everything against the wall and see what sticks without really giving a lot of thought to the consequences, regardless of where you stand on gun ownership as a right versus a restriction. It's a very, I think, lazy way of legislating, and it's very clumsy.
You're exactly right, and they don't consider the consequences on people up here either.
Larry, go ahead.
Not going.
As an honor safety instructor, I've got this many frequently asked questions about the new laws that first ladies say to tear around. I'd be glad to give it to Cassandra, and she get copies up to all of us sitting here, because some of these frequently asked questions actually contradict each other, which is just amazing. But some of the young lads with the semi-automatics and stuff like that, this does clear up some of that. Still go ahead with your resolution here to do this, but we can give you a little more.
Well, there were actually 3 recent laws that they passed. One dealt with pistol permits and semi-automatic weapons. One was a completely separate law on new dealer restrictions or dealer requirements. And I don't remember what the third was, sort of a combination between the two, but also requires the state police to form a database for all ammunition sales and require a background check for ammunition, including 22s, everything that goes in a weapon. When they developed this law, I think they thought that they were going to be able to get in on a federal ATL background check now, which exists for gun transfers. Guns, rifles, shotguns, and pistols, all long guns, pistols. But there is no provision in that system to do ammunition checks. So in order for the state to accomplish this database for ammunition sales, the state police would have to develop and institute a completely new program where you have to call the state to get a background check on an individual. It won't be federal. It's just crazy.
Well, the semi-automatic rifle one, under 21 and over 21, but when they got the pushback on it, what they said now is anyone that can get a legal hunting license. Well, I'm training 11-year-olds and I'm giving them a thing that says they can have a hunting license. You can loan them for the day a semi-automatic rifle and they can hunt with
I hadn't seen that.
But that's
They haven't
in here.
backed away
it.
from
This just came out, it's getting stupid.
They haven't backed away from, the law. Language in the law still says you have to obtain this permit, which is not available yet.
Yeah.
In order to purchase a semi-automatic rifle. There's no system to do that either.
Yeah, and maybe the governor will promise, well, we never meant it to do that, or we won't prosecute that, but if that's what the law says, you don't want to take that risk.
Well, a couple of things, the imprint, the semi-automatic pistol imprint thing where it puts a unique identification on each shell that's fired in a semi-automatic pistol. They tried to do this in California in 2006. The manufacturer told them it wasn't possible because, first you have to develop the credentials for that particular pistol, and it has to follow that pistol throughout its life for 150, 200 years, or whatever it is. And if they replace any of the parts in it, that has to be amended. So the long story short is, no one sells semi-automatic pistols in the state of California.
But the legislators don't care, because they think that's a win for them if they can make it impossible.
Well, that's the whole,
Exactly.
It's a
the
backdoor.
theory behind all this. The data ammunition base, same thing, they tried to institute that in the 2013 SAFE Act, and the state police wouldn't do it. So that's where we're at.
Larry, in that SAFE Act, a friend of mine wanted to give a slingshot to her nephew and couldn't get it shipped to New York State. Had to get it shipped down to North Carolina to another relative, and then that relative sent it up here for a slingshot. And another example, I've been passing on when Jake sends us those emails regarding what he can and can't do and whatever. I've been passing it on to a couple of people that have asked me to. One of them said, "Did you read that?" I said, "No, I'm not going to change my ways." He said, "Well, don't read it, you'll throw up." So it's just so beyond the pale, and it just affects our way of life up here, and it's not right.
Well, it's a product of legislators or staff members in Albany undertaking legislation that they, in writing it, when they have they don't have any knowledge of the discussion or the subject in the first place.
Exactly right. Yeah. And don't care.
Right. It's a feel-good, knee-jerk reaction.
They don't care what we think.
So in this redrafted additional one that we just gave out to you, you'll see, Ian, in section 2, that we added something that the chairman wanted to address, to call for the immediate repeal of the law.
Or of the laws, because there's actually three of them.
Well, yeah, well, it just, the gun control legislation that they passed.
Okay.
Would someone like to make a motion with that amended section included?
Oh, no.
By Dick, second by Phil. Any other discussion on it? All in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Just do immediate repeal in big cat letters. Where did you?
Yeah.
You mean you think somebody knows if they'll read it?
Yeah. Cap letters and little things like that, sometimes they get curious.
Number 5 is seeker review of a new trail to be added to the Lewis County ATV OHV trail system and declaring no significant impact. This is the Joseph P. Van Handel property and certain portions of Burdick's Crossing Road and Lions Falls Road.
Can I get someone to make that motion? Josh.
It just has to be all those in favor.
Oh, okay. All in favor?
I
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Adopting local law number 4-2022, a local law permitting all-terrain vehicles, off-highway vehicles operation on approximately 0.2 miles of certain portions of the Burdick's Crossing Road and approximately 200 feet of a certain portion of Lions Falls Road.
Any discussion?
This will get defined clear, rather than just the certain portions and stuff that'll be spelled out someplace.
I believe it's in the local law.
Okay.
We've typically included maps in the
Yes.
past.
Okay, that's all I wanted.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Incorporating Joseph P. Van Handel property in the Lewis County ATV OHV trail system.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing I Love New York campaign matching funds of $50,000 and designate Lewis County Chamber of Commerce as the county's agent to supervise promotion and marketing of the campaign.
Any discussion?
Is this the same law as last year?
Last year was 40,000, they've asked for 50,000 this year.
Do we get, we've had this discussion before, but do we get back enough to warrant doing this, or don't we have any choice?
Well, you get it back, but it's more regional. You know, they're advertising snowmobiling, and they might say on Tug Hill, and it might say Old Forge, or it might be the whole thing. There's nothing that I know of that is specific to Lewis County.
That's what I wanted, because if
It's
we've
more
got that
regional.
naturally Lewis type of deal, we'll still continue to fund to do that too. This won't cover that, okay.
No, this is that I Love New York.
Yeah.
I always like to point out that this is, since the timing of submittal to New York, this is some of the first 2023 money that we're actually committing to the budget, even though we haven't discussed the budget yet, but this will be included.
But they need to know now, right?
The state does.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing a memorandum of understanding between Lewis County Department of Recreation, Forestry, and Parks and Board of Cooperative Educational Services for access to county property for forestry students to participate in BOCES internship program.
Any discussion? It's the first time we've done this, or have we done it in the past?
Every 3 years or whatever, John, that one,
What's that?
how often do we have to renew this agreement with BOCES?
We do it every year. This resolution will authorize the chairman to sign it. All the years.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis 911 operations and integrated systems under the fiscal year 21 SICG grant funds for microwave point-to-point link upgrades at a cost not to exceed $60,149.36.
Any discussion? Bill, what do you think microwave point to point?
I was gonna compliment Cassandra for being able to read it.
So this is our system that allows this room back here to be the backup center for 911. It's a direct point-to-point from the tower at the PSP. We haven't updated it in several years. So this is using some of the grant funding that we received on cell phone surcharges to upgrade that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
That's
say nay.
how Phil travels back and forth from bank.
Microwave.
Point-to-point.
There's a Jetson.
Motion carries.
Appropriating funds in the E911 accounts in the amount of $12,255 for additional PSAP grant funds received.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Appropriating funds in the solid waste accounts in the amount of $500,000 for additional revenue and associated expenditures incurred related to one large municipal disposal project.
Any discussion?
Can you explain that, Ryan?
Yep, the village of Loudville cleaned out their lagoons as part of their wastewater treatment plant renovation project. And we have a right, in fact, we do charge all commercial vehicles from Lewis County that go directly to Rodman. We get a piece of that fee. In the case of municipalities that are hauling large amounts of solid waste for a municipal project, we typically waive our portion of the fee. But they do have to still pay the bank fee, so we have to make that balance. So we waived our fee, but we have to pay.
Doesn't bank reduce the fees on this type of waste also?
I think they do, but we still have to recognize in our budget money in, money out, right? So the village allows us to pay through us, and we didn't anticipate they were going to do that this year.
Would it be an enterprise? This goes to the bracket of the enterprise fund?
Well, it goes to nothing because we're taking in 500,000 and we spent 500,000.
Okay.
So it's a lot.
So covers what you spent.
We didn't, yes. We're doing it for free.
Any discussion? Or any other discussion, I guess? All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
And then the motion that I have is to authorize Brian Pano, Purchasing Director, to send out an RFQ for engineer services on the public safety building parking lot renovation project.
Can I get someone to make that motion? Made by Dick. Want to second the motion? Second by Josh. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Any other business to come forward?
I had two items for committee. One, I wanted to bring the board up to speed. Working with Tim Hunt and Cheryl, our 911 operations coordinator. At the beginning of the year, towards the end of the winter, the radios are being updated in the highway equipment and the road patrol, and the radios are still functional. They're not outdated, but they will be put on the shelf. And in discussion with Tim and Cheryl, those radios could be reprogrammed with a talk channel for municipalities and then on the county-wide system as well. And those radios can be put into the municipalities' trucks. They're plow trucks, town trucks, if you will. So when they're doing shared services, blacktopping, hauling gravel, they can talk on the county-wide frequency or speak to their own talk group. And Cheryl's done a great job of that. Tim's done a great job of that. And we're kind of in the finishing stages of removing, the radios are pretty much removed out of the road patrol and the highway equipment. Cheryl's getting them back and kind of deprogramming them, reprogramming them, and they would be distributed to the municipalities before snow flies. Been a little longer than anticipated, but she's done a lot of work with that, and she's outsourced a grant, so that can be potentially be covered for the installation for municipalities. So the installation will be covered, and they can have communication amongst their group and working with the county. So I think it's great for communication, safety, and it's no sense having them sit on the shelf for 5 to 10 years like this. She's done a lot with that and been in great communication with her.
Thanks for your work on that, Josh, and to Cheryl too. We should point out the work she's doing.
Yeah,
It's excellent.
There's a lot involved with that, more than I think anyone of us anticipated. The other, everyone on this committee has a copy of a letter from the Martinsburg Fire Department, Volunteer Fire Department, and a quote associated with that. And that's a topic there that's been shared and have had correspondence back and forth with the fire department in regards to the price of a new rescue device that they're looking to procure in-house. The one they have is a side-by-side on tracks. It's kind of at the end of its lifespan. They had reached out. That's the area there that District 7 is in, and asked if there's any feasible funding that the county may have to help and aid, offset some cost in that. The letters from the fire department, they procured roughly $7,000 in fundraising costs. The approximate cost of side-by-side outfitted with a rescue device is $54,000 and change, and call it $55,000. They do service a great portion of the county from the southern part of Martinsburg up to Lowville to the county line in Barnes Corners and out into Branningham. They're primarily the ones to the scene in regards to an ATV snowmobile accident. Again, their side-by-side has kind of reached the end of its lifespan, and they inquired.
So Martinsburg Fire Department is a department of municipal Martinsburg town government.
Correct.
I don't think so. Are they?
I don't know if they're a standalone or
They have a fire district, I think, in
they have a
Martinsburg.
fire district up, and they have a fire district down in Glenfield, 3G. But
So is it a department or a 501c3, or how does that work? I
The
don't know.
town, yeah.
It doesn't really matter.
Well, towns can't have fire departments. They do it
They do.
either through the fire
Contract
fire
agreement.
protection
they
district.
have a fire protection.
Yeah, so it's governance, I mean, technically it's governance is separate, its taxes are separate. I think, isn't that right?
I didn't hear the
They're
beginning.
just, I mean, they're not under the town of even though they call themselves the Martinsburg Fire Department, they're not under the town of Martinsburg board.
No, but there is fire district taxes that go through the towns.
Okay.
Right. So we just gave the town of Martinsburg $40,000 with excess sales tax. something like that.
Approximately, yes.
So my thought would be for the county to match any donation from the town of Martinsburg up to, say, 20,000, 10,000, 15, 20,000. It would be a match with the town of Martinsburg, who is cash flow positive with wind farm money. We would match whatever they donate, up to a max.
My only thing is equal. Is I would like to see us put in the budget every year a certain amount for each fire department.
Well,
Like we do the museums and whatever.
to this point, this vehicle is used pretty much countywide, right?
It is.
So it would be
It's
shared vehicle.
centrally located in the county.
West Leiden just bought one.
Correct.
2 years ago,
Correct.
West Leiden Fire Department in Southern Tuck Hill split the bill. We didn't come to the county. We pay for it ourselves. If you're gonna do this for Martinsburg, then you ought to do the same for every volunteer fire department in the county. I think this came about a few years ago. I wasn't on the board, but I was in the fire department. Some department came forward and asked for money, and then the board kind of turned around and gave every department money to keep it equal. You can't, every department has special needs.
And that was thanks to Larry. You were the one that instigated giving that $2,000 to all the other departments, as I recall.
It had to be your
Doesn't Crokin have?
Had to
one
be
of
my
those
fault.
Had to be your thought.
No, I wasn't on the board then, I have to.
machines? Doesn't Crokin have one of those machines also?
Yes.
I think we just
Well,
need
if
to
there's a
not get
precedent
involved
been
in.
set, I withdraw my thought.
I belong to the New Bremen
I
Auxiliary.
appreciate the help of the fire departments, but I think we need to be.
We've been
I'm not
having,
sitting up there, I'm sitting back here. I'm just,
we've been having that discussion about, you know, like once we deal with EMS and then the fire departments are gonna be another thing. We have to really consider the way that they operate in the county. What role does the county play in their operations and in their financing too? So,
Other fire departments have to make money for what they want. They raise money, and the auxiliaries give them money every year.
but I think there's also something to be discussed, that ambulance services, well, a lot of them are combined with the fire department, provide a service to people who come into this county for the recreational purpose. And I will tell you, as being part of that an ambulance service that does that, we're on the losing end because we typically don't get reimbursed for those EMS calls. You know, we're providing a service that people expect when they come to recreate in our county, and it kind of falls back to the local taxpayers. So I'm just putting that out.
Ian, can I just ask you to follow up on Jeff's point? I know Ryan and Larry formed that EMS subcommittee, and I'm wondering if this kind of issue shouldn't be something that's followed up through whatever recommendation and report that committee is working on.
I believe we have a meeting scheduled, right, Sandra?
Not quite yet.
We're working on it.
Jeff, did you say a slide and ball, a side-by-side not too long ago?
Yes, we bought one approximately 2 years ago, I think.
What did that run, do you remember?
Oh, I think I don't know how it came up. Maybe the price has gone up, but we've got it fully outfitted for about 30,000.
Say
That's what it used to
20s.
be, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was about 30,000 by the time we got the back on it, and then it was a little bit extra because the fire department bought the trailer to transport it. But again, we provide that service to any place, you know, south coming north, any place that calls us. But back to your question, it was probably about 30,000.
Yeah, because I think that's what it was when we got the side-by-side through the sheriff, they were 30-something.
Yeah. We've got a,
This one evidently has a lot more.
boy, I thought ours had too many bells and whistles, but this has more. I don't know. And it might have been. It was probably 35.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So on that, it was just, just wanted to bring it up to the committee. And I believe what triggers, what they're looking at securing grants and funding. So their grant or funding source is looking for what other monetary funding donations will you be receiving, so they can look at that.
I think Larry had something on something there with his motion, so.
Well, I'm gonna withdraw that because, there's a precedent that's set by other fire departments, and I don't think it's fair to just point for us to jump in the middle of a third one.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
In both of Phil's comment, and
maybe,
one you do for all.
maybe we can recommend the EMS committee or subcommittee, whatever it is, look at it, but in a way where we establish some kind of practice going forward that this is how we're going to support the fire company. So it's not just one gift for one department, but if we have departments that do provide an extra service that supplements our sheriff's department and our own coordination along that ends, then we can kind of deal with those.
Yeah, I think it's something that the EMS committee could look at and discuss from various angles. I don't know how it works, but whether it's UTVs or Lowville's aerial ladder, if it's needed in Mines Falls, they go and help. Then there's an expense involved.
What do you think, Jeff? I want to make sure everybody feels like they're being treated fairly, not that we won't do anything, but if this is gonna be a new role for us, then let's do it in a way that's fair for
I
everyone.
think we have to step back and think about it. I mean, going back to the aerial, that kind of, any department in Lewis County knows they can go any place in Lewis County to help, and they're glad to do it. I think this is stepping into a little bit different area with the snowmobilers, the ATVers, and like that, because it's outside people asking for our help that the fire departments and ambulance service don't get anything back from. It's not neighbor helping neighbor so much, it's neighbor helping an outsider, which, nothing against outsiders or anything like that, it's just the fact that we tend not to get,
Does that have to do
cover
with
anything
the
from
way
that.
the insurance reimbursement works, or where they're transported, or why isn't there any benefit?
We've just, I've done a lot of background spreadsheet work and seeing how we get paid, who pays, how much each person pays. And as soon as it comes every time to a snowmobile accident, it's zero. Out of state, out of town, can't get, but it was zero.
They just aren't paying.
For some reason, it's just, you think there's snowmobile insurance and it's coverage someplace, but I can't get to it.
There's no Medicaid or Medicaid line item.
And it's soft bill, right, you don't have to please. So you're doing soft bill, you're gonna go to hard bill.
What was on to question.
So it's kind of a billing system or something.
I still would like us to consider,
Well, we can include that discussion in the CMS discussion that we have to see if we can come up with a fair way of distributing money that way. Phil, the other side of me is thinking that if we keep line iteming every 501c3, every fire department, every ambulance squad, with budget line items, where does it end? Where do we draw the line? I mean, who gets included and who doesn't? I think we need to revisit our thought or our process on that, because, technically, we're not in the business of taxing people to provide donations to people that, make fit our checklist.
well, ironically, that's why I suggested that, because once you get it in the budget, it doesn't leave.
Well, maybe we
So,
should,
you're
maybe we should.
the
pull
yin
all-
and I'm the yang, or whatever that
Maybe
is.
we should pull all that stuff and review it.
Jefferson County last year created an ad hoc committee to revisit all their non-departmental contributions, so that's something we can consider. Another way to do it, which I've talked to Larry and I've seen other counties do, is simply give, discretionary to all 10 legislators, and you guys are elected, you decide which not-for-profits or events or issues in your community are the most important, and, you can kind of, as long as it fits within the mission of government, you can roll that out yourselves. So there's lots of ways to go about it.
I just wanted to bring it up.
Do we want to form a committee to review that process?
I think this year's budget, that wouldn't be fair to the folks that have already put forward their requests. But next year, I think if you're gonna change the system, of looking at that, I would think, we already sent out a letter announcing how we were gonna do it this year, and they've already taken the time to respond. So if you wanna really look at a committee, I would think next year would be better. On the other hand, I'm gonna be delivering a budget, on November 1st. You guys can debate what's in it as much as you want. So if you wanna do it this year, you can do that too.
It's not an easy thing, because you've got 16 or 17 departments. You've got some towns that share windmill money. You've got a fair amount that don't. So I think we need to look at it and get more information on it. So let's not go back and say, no, let's say we're taking it under advisement, or considering it, and we'll get back.
Sound like the state of New York.
Yeah, if they don't, they're gonna say we said no, so I mean, didn't say no.
We could give them a CM grant, but they never fund.
Any other business for the committee?
No.
If not, can I get a motion to adjourn? Second? By Josh, all those in favor say aye. Opposed nay, motion carries. The meeting is now adjourned.
Health and Human Services Committee order. I'm going to make a motion to approve the August 16th, 2022 Health and Human Services minutes. If I can get a second.
No second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Carries. First presentation, we have Suicide Awareness Month. We got the Dream Team, Pat Fralick, Ashley Waite, and Anna Petz. We'll see. Don't get dated somewhere now.
All right, thanks so much for having us, everyone. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Anna Potts. I'm the Deputy Public Health Director, and everybody knows Pat. So September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. So we are gonna give you a brief overview of the work that the Lewis County Suicide Prevention Coalition and much of the public health staff have done over the last several years under the guidance of TAP2, and a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing and where we hope to head in the future. If you have any questions at any time, please go ahead and ask. We will do the best we can to answer them. So we are going to talk a little bit about data, the state priorities, so New York State Office of Mental Health, the coalition history, our structure, the current initiatives that we have going on, and then looking to 2023 and beyond. Alrighty, so up on your screen, you're gonna see two sets of data that really drive the work that we do. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you are going to see Lewis County's suicide mortality age-adjusted rate per 100,000 population. So this rate is one of the health indicators that is part of the New York State Prevention Agenda, also known as essentially New York State's Community Health Improvement Plan. And every 3 years, we do a local community health assessment and compare and take the opportunity to look at where our rates are compared to the Tri-County region, so Jefferson, Lewis, and St. Lawrence County, the rest of New York State, excluding New York City, as well as how we fare compared to New York State's prevention agenda objective. So these rates are high, as you'll see, but it's worth noting that because of our small population size here in Lewis County, it does not take too much of a change in the number of suicide deaths to change this rate. Every loss by suicide is too many. However, ours fluctuates quite a bit based on changes of just 1 or 2 deaths. You'll see at the bottom of that chart our most current rate, which is 22.0, and unfortunately, that rate puts us at the highest rate in New York State. On the right-hand side of the screen, you're going to see the actual number of suicide deaths in Lewis County for the last 10 years. I received this information from the Lewis County Coroner's Office, so from Leanne Mosher, and it is as up to date as yesterday. We have had 3 confirmed suicide deaths so far this year. And I did want to note that, and you can talk to Leanne more about this, but overdose deaths are not included in this number.
So, when we talk about, obviously, the suicide rate, and you see this on the news, that it's not only within our community, but also throughout the United States. Certainly a concern as to the populations that are demonstrating increased rates, and certainly that the COVID and all those stressors have added to that. So it's really on everybody's mind. So the New York State Office of Mental Health, way back in 2012, the community services and the local community had experienced several losses. And as a result of that, they partnered with the OMH's Suicide Prevention Office. They provided the county with technical assistance and support, and that's one of those things was the coalition. Since that time, we've continued to work with the Suicide Prevention Office of Mental Health, and have watched the support of the coalition and how that has grown over time. I really, really want to commend, it used to be Penny Ingham, and now Ashley Wade and Anna, to the success and how this has grown and how organized and research-based and how they've been able to engage members of this county to be able to support that and keep the awareness. And I'll get to this in a minute, but we've been recognized for the work that we've done at the state level. And that's, if you think about Lewis County being, reached out to is kind of pretty cool. And that is to the work and effort of everybody I just listed. Office of Mental Health obviously is charged with maintaining and watching this. And they certainly have in the past few years really concentrated on the crisis services, identifying the needs, and trying to identify some potential solutions to the counties to address those needs. And that is like a wide range of avenues. They were behind the zero suicide initiative, crisis services, whether they be walk-in crisis, on-call crisis, the 988 number. They've certainly looked at reducing the stigma, looking at education and training opportunities so that it becomes part of the conversation, and people are in a better position to try to recognize, support, and talk about that. So that really kind of talks about the other big system things that are going on. And then I'm going to turn back to you. Here we go.
Sure. So the coalition was formed in 2013, actually in response to a couple of youth suicides that happened pretty close together. I joined public health and the coalition at the same time. It's been about 5 years that I've been a part of both now. And so over the last several years, we've done many different things. We host several trainings regularly. We've participated in a campaign called Cup of Joe on the Go, where we exchange free cups of coffee for survey responses in local coffee shops. We launched the Traumatic Loss Team, which many of you have heard about before. We've received different grants from the state. We've partnered with our local sportsman's club to distribute gun locks. We have a website. We purchased COVID-19 workbooks that were distributed to the schools during the pandemic to help initiate conversations with kids about how they're feeling. We developed Lewis County mental health resource magnets, and I brought a bunch with me. So if anybody would like one, feel free to take them. It has our local behavioral health and wellness line on it, as well as the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the crisis text line, Traumatic Loss Team, and refers those in emergency right now to our emergency room and 911. We've received an assortment of funds over the last several years. We received donations. Fort John Regional Health Planning Organization has allocated rural health funds to the coalition. Pat has allocated some funds in her budget each year over the last couple of years to us. We most recently got a grant from the Youth Bureau, as well as other state grants. Here you'll see a breakdown of the coalition structure. So we have a steering committee that serve as the voting members of our coalition. We have a chairperson, and this year we decided that that person, whoever it will be a public health employee. So if you think back to one of my previous slides when I talked about that 22.0 rate, that's our current rate. The current prevention agenda objective is less than 7. Which means that we've got some work to do. And public health has included suicide prevention in our last couple community health improvement plans, and that focuses on, that's kind of our 3-year plan as to how we're going to address those health indicators where we have room for improvement in. So in other words, that means that some of public health staff time is dedicated to this work, whereas other members of the coalition really are volunteering their time, and their agencies are volunteering their time. So we have an opportunity to spend more time on this than others. We have a co-chair, a vice chair. Pat sits on the steering committee. Lisa's currently on the steering committee, and an elected secretary and treasurer. And then we have quite a few coalition members that participate as they're able, depending on their schedules, from schools, the hospital, local health and human service agencies, quite an assortment. Our funds are held at NERCL, so we have an MOU, we've signed an MOU with them, and they act as our fiduciary, which is wonderful because we're not our own 501c3, but new in 2023, although it's according to plan at this point, the county will be supporting some of our initiatives and really help us maintain the momentum that we've established over the last several years, and that those funds will be used to continue to offer trainings free to really anybody in Lewis County, have additional trainers trained, produce marketing materials, support our suicide loss support group, and participate in other awareness days, things like that.
I just looked up, I think it's $12,000 that we will be looking for in the budget.
So I just mentioned training. So some of our current initiatives, or these have been current, past, and will be future initiatives. We have at our disposal trainers to provide all of these evidence-based trainings. So QPR, and there's quite an assortment of time commitments for each training. So QPR is 1 hour. We have trainers that go into and just have recently gone into 2 of our local schools and trained tens and almost hundreds of their staff in this 1 hour, almost like it's called QPR to kind of compare to CPR, like anybody should have it and receive it, to how to support people during moments of crisis. Safe Talk, which is 2.5 hours. Adult and youth mental health first aid, each of those are at about a day long. Assist, which is applied suicide intervention skills training. We have one coming up in October. And then most recently, we received a grant to offer Gizmo's Possum Guide for Mental Health. That is not a grammatical error. This is Gizmo, and he is a stuffed animal. It has a book that goes along with him, and you'll see more about it on the next slide. It's a book and kind of guided reading to have a discussion with young children about mental health and coming up with a safety and mental health plan for themselves. That's not a training, it's just a reading.
We just keep it going.
I can make that happen.
I have 2 at my house.
It's so soft. You could just rub his thing.
Feel better.
He does not talk, unfortunately, but he is very
I
soft.
mean, yours like,
That's true.
and then you put on my 8 so you can talk, so there you go.
Yes. Yeah, so this was a recent addition to our repertoire, and a couple of our staff at Public Health worked with local libraries to offer several readings over the course of this summer. They were offered to all the libraries, and we were more than willing to go back. And now they're talking with some after-school programs to hopefully have more kids and participate in these conversations. And each child receives a free, it's called Stuffy, and a free book that they get to take home with them.
I brought my kids to it at the Garden Library, and even though they're 2 and 4, they did get something out of it. I was very surprised by it. And so now my 4-year-old, he knows what to do when he's mad, sad, or angry. So one of his ideas is climb up a really tall tree and stay there. So that's what we called it for a long time. But it was very digestible for kids, and they had therapy dog. It was great.
Other initiatives that we have going on right now during Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, one is our gun safe raffle. So while the best way to support a person who is in distress is to temporarily remove any sort of lethal means in the home, whether that be medication, a firearm, things like that, remove it from the home while they're in crisis. Another suicide prevention strategy is safe storage of firearms. So throughout the month of September, there's been multiple ways for people to enter into our gun safe raffle. We have a Facebook page and have distributed several informational videos on the page, and people are entered into the raffle by liking or sharing the page or the videos. You can be entered by donating to the coalition, and what's really neat is that if someone has completed a firearm safety course between January 1st and September 31st, if they submit proof of completion, they get 25 tickets automatically into the raffle. So we're anxious and excited to get those out into the community. We've been really successful at having conversations about suicide prevention with the firearm owning community when we make it about safety. We found that overwhelmingly people are really receptive to conversations about that and want to do whatever they can to keep themselves, those they love, and others safe.
It's a very large safe, right?
Yes.
What's,
It weighs both of them well over 100 pounds each, probably almost 200 pounds. It holds, I believe, 24 or 30 guns. Yes.
yeah, it's huge.
If you would like to see them, you can come to the entryway of Population Health Team at the hospital. They're currently there. You're welcome to come. They're taking up a lot of room.
Next to the break room fridges.
Which is a lot smaller, but does the trick. I looked, so I shared the information about the last 10 years, our suicide deaths here in Lewis County, and 52, almost 53% of the suicides in the last 10 years were the results of a gunshot wound. So the other thing that we're doing, so the informational videos that are being shared are part 2 of the county's mental health PSA campaign. So in May, we shared the first round of videos, and those were really focused on and geared towards mental health in general. And then we reserved several of the videos to release during September because the content of those videos is more suicide specific. And so I am going to, in just a minute, share with you a PSA that was intentionally saved for Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. I'm gonna have you press play in 1 second, Connor, but not quite. So here, you are going to hear from Lynette Bush. Many of you may know her. You may be familiar with the story, you may not be. I'm gonna try really hard not to get emotional before I even talk about it, but Lynette's brother died by suicide. It will be 10 years in December. And her story has been split up into 4 videos. The first video, she kind of introduced us to her brother Lauren, and you are going to now see the second video in the series. Video number 1 was published last night. Video number 2 will be published tonight, and 3 and 4 will follow tomorrow and Thursday, and they all build in the story. I believe videos 1, 3, and 4 do have a disclaimer on them because she does get very honest and does go into some detail, not too much, but some, so there is just a warning for viewers, but they are beautifully done, and I'll just let her speak for herself.
He called one day and he said, Lynette, I need to go up in the sugar bush and clean up because sugar is over. But he was in bed and he didn't know how to get out of bed to do what he needed to do. And so that was just something that was foreign to me to hear him say those words or to know that was going on. And so then I called my family, and we rallied together and went out to the sugar bush with them and helped them in the woods to clean up from the sugar season. I was at work one day and got a phone call from my father that Lauren needed to go over to the hospital because he had accidentally drank the disinfectant for the dumping station, the milk tank. So I went over and I got Lauren at my parents' house. But on the ride over, he was like a caged animal. And he kept saying, I don't need to go, I don't need to go. It's okay, turn around. And I said, no, we need to go. And in my mind, at this point, it was an accidental thing. And then when we got to the ER, they asked him if it was accidental or not. And he said yes. And they did tests to check his esophagus and stuff to make sure that nothing serious. And luckily, that there wasn't anything serious results from that. And when I went back to work, my boss said to me, that wasn't accidental. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, he wouldn't do something like that. But I just never believed it. So I asked, what do you do if you think someone's suicidal? How do you handle it? And they said that you need to ask them if they have a plan and how they would do it. And that was the most difficult thing I ever had to do. Yeah, he says, I'm getting ready to check out. And what do you mean? And so then I asked him, and he told me that he planned to do something and how he was going to do that. And it was very scary. That's when I made the phone call to 911 for Lauren to get help.
I've been in communication with the producers of these videos pretty regularly throughout the whole process, and they assured me that anytime that Lynette got emotional, they encouraged her to take a break, and she said no. She said, this is what we as survivors live with, and others need to hear it. Her interview was 84 minutes long. Somehow, they were able to capture as much of the story as they could in 11 minutes, and they are all equally, if not more, moving. So if you haven't watched them yet, I would encourage you to do so. All of the videos are on Facebook, but they're also at lewiscounty.org/neighbors. So you'll find her videos as well as all the other participants in the campaign. So if you saw on the last slide, we described Lynette as a suicide loss survivor. And when suicide loss is traumatic and can really lead to a form of grieving that is unlike any other and really requires special attention. And so this past year, just in June, we launched for the first time ever a suicide bereavement support group. So this has never been available specifically for those who have lost a loved one to suicide. And this group meets once a month. It's on the fourth Tuesday at the Louisville Free Library from 6 to 8. There's a hybrid or a call-in option, and any and all suicide loss survivors are encouraged. We've actually even opened it up to those outside of Lewis County because we found there to be quite a gap in this resource in not only the Tri-County region, but even going down to like Oneida County and Herkimer County. The other support that is available to people if they suffer suicide loss or other traumatic loss is the traumatic loss team, which we talked about before. There's no right way to really quantify the number of, or it's hard to quantify the number of lives a suicide loss touches, but some research suggests that it's up to like 135 people who are impacted by just one loss. So I'm really proud of the fact that we have these resources available. We hope to not need them, but I'm really grateful that we have these available in the community. So as Pat said, the work that we've done over the last several years has been recognized. I've presented at the New York State Suicide Prevention Conference, as well as a couple other work groups and listening tours, especially those focused on rural communities, because as we know, things are a little different here and unique. And it's been really, really humbling to be invited to share our success stories and hopefully help other communities establish a support similar to ours. Looking to 2023 and beyond, we are going to complete a strategic plan. We've got our first strategic planning session scheduled for November 8th from 2:30 to 4:30 at the Lewis County JCC Education Center. Any and all are welcome to attend. And it would be great to have a representative from the board if you're interested. We're hoping to continue the means reduction and safe storage conversation in Lewis County, and we're hoping to bring a program called Lock and Talk Virginia here, and that it will be Lock and Talk Lewis County, but Virginia is who, a community in Virginia is who has developed this program, and they have tons and tons of resources and technical support for working with gun ranges, gun shops, firearm owning community to talk more and implement more safe storage. We will support and promote 988. So this summer, 988 was established and launched. So previously, you had to dial a 1-800 number to connect with the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And now, if you dial 988, you're connected to the same resource. The hope is that it will be as easy to remember and access as 911. There are many people, many higher powers that be working on that. And so we will do everything that we can to support and promote that.
Just to touch on that, it's also for mental health.
Yes, thank you.
So it's not just suicide, but if you or you feel like someone you know is having, some sort of mental health crisis, you can call that 988 number. And you can also text the 988 number. I heard yesterday at the conference that from a year ago in August, calls are up 50%. So it's definitely being utilized. Hopefully it'll help connect people.
Yes. This is what we're planning so far, but again, we're gonna have that strategic planning session, in a couple weeks. That will really inform our decisions and actions for the next couple years. And we plan, suicide prevention will be a priority in our, new community health improvement plan at public health. And so we will have the opportunity to choose different evidence-based interventions to implement over the course of the next 3 years of that as well. And so more to come on those details. And that's all I have. Do I have any questions?
Is the 988 number linked to 911? Because everybody knows 911.
Yeah.
You call that and mention suicide, would that be an automatic rollover to 988? How's that?
I think it's the other way around. So if you were to call 988 and say they couldn't find crisis support available to you right then, they would redirect your call to 911.
I'm just thinking that 911 is established and 988 is not. So
Fortunately,
that's smiling at
I
me.
am smiling at you. Yes.
Fortunately, I would say that the suicide prevention lifeline is pretty well established. So if you call either number at this point, they will both go to this. If you call the 1-800 number for the lifeline or 988, it's this, you end up in the same place. So there is that, but
Maybe we need to, or maybe you have, talk to, maybe send a memo to our dispatch team who would answer 911 calls here in Lewis County and make sure they're aware of 988 because they could transfer, someone as well.
Right. I'll check on that. I want to say that I'm hoping something's already happened. But I'll check on that. The other thing too is each area has been assigned a call center within New York State. And so with the idea that that call center will be aware of what's available in Lewis County and be able to connect that person for the crisis services. Ours is called, our call center is Community Center, Community Services. It's out of Syracuse. In addition to Lewis County, they have several other counties, but that's the idea and intent. But I will check to see I just know anecdotally that there was supposed to be concerns about the 911 and how if the call gets here, how does it get to where it needs to be and vice versa. I'll follow up.
Any other questions, Dan?
Actually, I have one, but it goes back to your report that you get in our packet.
Oh, yes.
I was looking through, and I put a question mark on it when I was reading it. It said suicide, you had one in the first, but I'm wondering, what my question was the number of drug overdose deaths. You hear that constantly on the news, and I was wondering where Lewis County stood. And it says 0, is that?
That would be for the quarter, whatever quarter that is,
Okay, that was the first quarter.
okay? 0.
Okay, what about? Williams later?
We're just got done. I'd asked for those numbers. I get those from Leanne.
Okay.
So that would be another data point that she provides to us. And she did not respond by the time I sent that report out. But as I get the information, I add it in.
Okay, I was just wondering if we were actually lucky to be at 0 or
That, for that quarter, yes.
that quarter.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Ladies?
And you gotta have.
Okay, next up we have Ryan to talk about veteran services, and you've got 15 minutes. So,
I can do it in 10.
oh.
My part is easy, it's your guys' turn. That's the harder part. I don't need a presentation. We already have this. I assume everybody's gonna jump in on this, so I'm just gonna hand it out to. Very welcome. Yeah, one. Okay. Earlier this year, we transitioned our veterans service operations to a contract. Well, technically, we don't have a contract yet, but we have an agreement with Jefferson County for their veteran service office to come to Lewis County twice a week to provide that service to our residents. At this point, Jefferson County is in Lewis County on Wednesdays and Fridays for a full day. However, we've made them available at their home base in Watertown for the 7 days a week. So veterans from Lewis County are able to call, email, or contact the folks at Jefferson County 5 days a week, but we've got in-person right here in the Veterans Office 2 days a week. When we made that transition to Jefferson County, I had promised at the time that we would review that going into the 2023 budget and decide how we wanted to proceed. So it was experimental. It's not the first time that we've shared services with Jefferson County. You may recall the Weights and Measures Office. It was a Jefferson County operation that Lewis County has been able to take advantage of since 2015, I believe. So what I've also included is a report from Dave Pavey, the Veteran Services Director for Jefferson County. And we've had this arrangement since mid-June. And you can see the claims that have come through the office since then. So definitely an uptick in terms of the claims that we were working with before making the switch. So that's good that we seem to be seeing more veterans. And the contacts seem to be much higher as well. This includes about a 4-week gap where we had Dave Pavey went on vacation for a couple weeks and then came back and had some illness for a couple weeks. So we really didn't have 2-day-a-week coverage for quite some time in July. And you can see the claims for July are a little bit down as well as some of the veterans served. So going forward, we basically have 3 options. One is that we continue our relationship with Jefferson County. We have not yet talked about price. The state of New York provides Lewis County with $20,000 a year for veteran services. That money has to be, we can get it back, but I presume we would like to spend it. So my guess is that would be our contribution to Jefferson County as our state aid. But I haven't had a chance to talk with their county administrator. We do have a meeting coming up, but there's been vacations and we just haven't connected. So there's also an opportunity for shared services revenue. As you know, anytime the county or town or city or village share a service with another jurisdiction, the state reimburses some of the savings back into our pocket for the first year. So it's an opportunity for at least year 1. So first option is maintain our relationship with Jefferson County. Exactly how that looks, I'm not sure, but I can say with some certainty that would be less than what we had budgeted last year for a department head. So option 1, maintain with Jefferson County. Option 2, we can basically restore what we had before making the change this summer and go back to a basically 1-person department. Last year, the budget for that department was $62,742. That would be full week in-person coverage right here in Lewis County. That's one of the options to bring it back in-house. The other would be to place a veteran service officer under the direction of, my recommendation would be under Office for the Aging. I think their missions are fairly similar in terms of the demographics of folks that, potentially could be walking through the door. And I think Crystal's more than capable of handling that, and we've talked about it a little bit. So, basically, we're talking about the cost of a full-time position versus the cost of contract with Jefferson County. So it's difficult to say volume-wise what's out there and the demand, because I think we went through a period where people weren't really utilizing the service in Lewis County as effectively as they could have. So it's encouraging to see that Jefferson County has picked up more cases than we were seeing before, which is good. But it begs the question, how many more would we see if we went back to full-time? So that is the question before the board. I apologize, usually I like to make more database decisions, but we really don't have that much data. I mean, we have some information from before we made the change. I'm not very confident of the quality of that information. And we have information since the change, which I provided you. So that's basically where we're at. So thoughts?
What are we hearing from our veterans? Anything at all?
I am not hearing much.
I haven't heard anything.
That's not true. I would say.
As a veteran that recently talked to him, I was impressed with his knowledge of looking up information. I think the key, it would work with a part-time person. The key would be to make sure that on our website, that the email address, the phone numbers are what will connect to him. I sent an email, I forget now, 3 days before I happened to have connections to talk to him, and never did even answer. Now, did it go to the right place? I don't know. And all it was an email requesting an appointment. But when I got to talk to him, very knowledgeable, very helpful. I don't know if our numbers require a full-time person, as long as the access is there.
Well, Tom, to that end, if we were to put someone in OFA, for instance, on a part-time basis, say that their job scope was 2 or 3 days a week, or whatever required for veteran services, do you feel that would be beneficial to the veterans in our county versus what is in place now?
I don't know if we would gain anything by doing that. Yes, there would be somebody to talk to, but as long as they could get through and know that they're getting the appointment coming up, whichever way.
So you're just saying that we need to work on it and make sure that the communication level is high, and you send an email and get a response with the existing.
Yep.
So the knowledgeability of the person in Jefferson County is better than the convenience of having someone 5 days a week.
The knowledge outweighs the convenience.
I would share some feedback that Crystal and Jenny provided as social workers that know the landscape in the North Country. Veterans, when they do seek help, it tends to be on their terms. I'm summarizing what they probably said much more eloquently, but basically, they're going to make a decision to walk through the doors and seek help that day. And if someone's not there, it's frustrating, and it feeds into the, the government doesn't care. I can't access, the help that I need. So that is a disadvantage of only having coverage 2 days a week. However, I would think a plan to combat that would be, as Tom had said, to be very clear about when the office is open. And we have to make sure that if the guy, Dave Pavey from Jefferson County goes on vacation, they send somebody else here on that day. We have to have consistent coverage on the days that we say we're gonna have it. And same thing with returning phone calls and emails, we need to make sure we're on top of that for this demographic of people. Another feedback that Jenny and Crystal provided was that the courthouse with the metal detectors and security is not always the best set for veterans to feel comfortable interacting with. So, that's something to consider. We don't have a lot of extra room, really, we've got barely any extra room at the Human Services Building, which will be complete, hopefully this spring. But if we wanted to move the venue there, I think we could figure out a way to make that happen.
But you still got an armed guard, we just talked about earlier, up there, that they would see, so there is some kind of screening.
True.
So where's he coming here, downstairs?
Same
The whole
office.
Okay.
Could we do both? Could we have an in-house person that hopefully is busy enough, and if they're not, they could help with other OFA things? And 2 days a week, having a Jefferson County counterpart come, and then that could maybe create more of a regional approach and help to bolster our own veteran services.
I'd ask Crystal to weigh in on that. So did you hear the question?
Yeah, so I think that this is a very specialized service that, what's the term, Ryan, that they have to be a trained
Veteran service officer.
veteran service officer that comes with a credentialing process? I think, that's important to keep in mind. I don't think we can offer that part-time. I think that's a full-time position that in order to recruit a qualified professional and to have them trained, that's a full-time job, not a part-time job. And if we have that person, well, to answer your question, Lisa, could we do both? I don't think we have the demand for like our own part-time position and have someone from Jefferson County here. But if we did have our own position and it was under OMA, because I'm not a veteran, I don't have that specialty, I think it would be important for us to still contract with their county for technical assistance, for some level of supervision and support. There's still gonna need to be a relationship. I think they would fit in perfectly at our team, and we end up serving a lot of veterans. But we try to get them connected to veteran services because it's such a specialized field that we don't have the knowledge. We need to properly advise veterans. So
What if we did this? What if we changed the office location to OFA? This person, Dave, maybe comes to OFA instead of the courthouse here. That gets rid of the security problem. And if the phone rings into OFA, they would be there on a 5-day basis to answer the call and make sure that the communication is followed up.
Yep, another thing that came to mind is we could ask Jefferson County for a 5-day-a-week contract instead of a 2-day-a-week
Well,
contract.
if there's not enough, visitation or requests, we can't fill 5 days.
Larry, just to respond to that, my last comment would be, I don't think we're meeting veteran demand. I think that, veterans are going elsewhere to be served and sometimes not getting answers to their questions. And
So if we change the siting to your office and the demand warrants increasing to 5 days a week, we could revisit this then.
So the advantage to having Jefferson County involved is that they already have an office of 6 people. So whether we ask them to add a position that we pay for here, the advantage is during vacation coverage, and a lot of this is rather complicated paperwork. They've got the back office support to be able to provide that expertise. I think one of the hurdles when we kind of got this department down to one person was that it's specialized, and I do think that our previous director got into the weeds on some things, and that prevented us from doing outreach and some other stuff that I feel, and I think this board feels that we need. Dave Pavey from Jefferson County is very involved with trying to do more outreach. He's been going to events with the American Legion. We're trying to get him in with the Marine Corps League to meet with some of the leadership over there. So, we need not only the technical paperwork, navigation of the system expertise, we need outreach and connection in order to make sure that we're reaching those veterans. I remember when I worked for Schenectady County, they had a traveling roadshow where they went out to each community and like tried to drum up business. And some of the folks, that had never walked through the door ever, but when you find them, it turns out they do require some services. So, whatever we do, it needs to be matched with outreach and, some of the technical expertise to actually, navigate the benefit paperwork and veteran system, which is difficult. So that's why I lean a little bit towards Jefferson County, because they have, more back office people. Dave could meet with 5 people, and if we had one person here, it'd take him 2 weeks to do that paperwork, where, he could meet with 5 people and then farm some of that back to the home office. So,
The VA can be very difficult paperwork-wise.
Yeah.
It's typical federal government. Their forms can be different, just complicated. Ask for an income number, and you can't just leave it blank because you don't have that. You got to put a 0 in it, type of thing. Why didn't this form go through? Well, we didn't put a 0 there. Not applicable. You don't have a middle initial. Well, the reference is NMI, no middle initial. Okay, that's silly things like that.
I feel like we need at least one person in Lewis County for our veterans 5 days a week. What did the program look like 10 years ago?
Well, even 6, 7 years ago, we had 3 people in that office: a director, a deputy director, and a clerical assistant. So, and I would say that was not the result of budget cuts or the result of, the county government trying to reduce spending on veterans. It was more or less, we were convinced that the office didn't need those things. And so we followed the advice of the director.
Well, I would be the first one to support 5 days a week in Lewis County. But if the work isn't there, what does that person do on the other 3 days a week?
Outreach, look for the work.
Where are we going?
I guess we have to hear from Jefferson County.
I guess I would agree with that. I think if you find the right person, you would hold it, because that would be a person that wants to help, that's ambitious, that wants to do the outreach. I think maybe part of the problem, I'm just speaking possibly, if you don't have the right person and they're just there to collect the paycheck and do the bare minimal, then you're back to square one, where you're better off with 2 days a week from Jefferson County. I think my thought is we look for somebody full-time, keep maybe Jefferson County on retainer to help on the days they're gone, or something to backfill, and for some guidance and backup and help, but to find the right person, not the first person.
One thing that gives us an advantage is that with Fort Drum, there are a lot of people that are certified VSOs in our area. So, we might be able to find somebody. So, whether they live here or would live here, I'm not so sure.
There's claims on here. Does that equate to people? In other words, in 4 months, you only have 15 people?
No.
Okay.
Claims are, one person could have 3 claims.
Okay, so.
Could be less.
Could be less, could be more. Okay. Well,
I would probably favor something like going to Jefferson County 5 days a week, because they have that backfill. But until Jefferson County, when you're able to do that, I don't think that we can move forward with the decision.
Yeah, I do apologize. I try not to bring you problems without solutions attached, but I haven't been able to connect with these guys, so, and the budget is due in a month, so we have to kind of talk about it. But, give me another month, I can bring it back to, I mean, we do have some time. I mean, you know, I can bring it back in October, with some more details from Jefferson County. We can do that.
For the budget, you've got 2022 one at 62,742. That could be thrown in as a placeholder, because you said you didn't think Jefferson County would be much more than that either, and then we have a
That would be
budget.
far less.
We have a budget number, I would say you could do that.
Yeah.
It gives us more time to find out where we want to go.
The one piece of this that I would personally not recommend is, I don't think we should bring it back as a department head level position.
No, I think you're right there.
It's difficult for me to manage 27 direct reports, but most of the time, you guys know, I'm not managing, they're doing a wonderful job, but with the department of one that doesn't have a lot of accountability, that becomes difficult. So I prefer to have it under, another department if possible.
Yeah, I think either Jefferson County or with OFA.
Okay, we'll work on it. I'll get with Crystal, we'll get a more defined plan together for option 2. I'll get with Jefferson County, we'll get a more defined plan together for option 1. I'll try to get with Jefferson County, I'm reaching out to them. We're all busy, it's.
So I have to do it for you. Okay, I think we can move on to that, Sandra.
The first docket is appointing Wyatt Wagner of Lowell to the Community Services Board and the Developmental Disability Subcommittee for the term of October 5th, 2022 through December 31st, 2025.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Carries.
Authorizing agreement between Lewis County Office for the Aging and Caregivers Home Health Care to provide personal care aids, homemaker services for OFA clients for the term of January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023 at a cost of $40 per hour with a minimum of 30 hours per week per aid to a maximum of 40 hours per week per aid.
Any discussion?
I'd like to point out that Crystal gave a presentation a couple months ago. This was option B on that presentation, if you recall. One was we were gonna try to hire some aides in-house, the other was we were gonna try to have some defined contracts with local service providers where they would basically have aides exclusively dedicated to Lewis County. This is that option that we're gonna try to work out.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay? Carries.
Authorizing agreements between Lewis County Office for the Aging and various providers for program services.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay? Carries.
Authorizing agreements between Lewis County Department of Social Services and NERCL Bethel Church and Catholic Charities for warming center services for the 2022 and 2023 Code Blue season at a cost of $10,000 for Bethel Church to provide the building, $112,102 to NERCL to provide staffing, and $12,000 to Catholic Charities to provide supplies and furnishings.
Brian, can you just speak on where some of the funding's coming from?
Yeah, this is funding that we've always spent. We've had the obligation to provide Code Blue services for quite some time. Code Blue is when the weather gets below 34 degrees or 32 degrees, I forget what it is. 32, thank you, Jay. 32 degrees, we have an obligation, no questions asked, to give people shelter during that time. Typically, we have an on-call employee at DSS that kind of triages and tries to find people space. But as you've been hearing in the news, finding space is getting harder and harder. So we'd like to have a defined relationship. So basically, rather than, having various apartments and hotel rooms and whatever else, we're gonna have one spot dedicated for these folks. There'll be, some chairs and some warm meal, but no beds, no cots. We're not encouraging them to stay. It's to get out of the weather, and when the morning comes, they're back out. So unless they get hooked up with other services that we provide out.
If it's above 32 degrees.
We gotta just,
It's not spending any new money, they're just reallocating where you already have it spent.
we're, yeah,
This is reimbursed by, Code Blue Services are reimbursed by the state, 100%.
but it'll be interesting to see if compared against prior years, this turns out to be more or less.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Will this handle the volume we're anticipating normally, or do we need another center someplace on the road?
No, our volume is very low.
Okay.
That's, less than 5 usually.
Less than 5. Thank you.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Carries.
Authorizing an extension agreement between the County of Lewis and ICU Security and Private Investigations for armed security guard services at the Department of Social Services Building for the term of November 1st, 2022 through October 31st, 2023, at a cost not to exceed $82,836.75.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay? Carries. And I will make, is there anything else for the committee? I will make that motion to adjourn, if I can get a second. Motion carried.
Right, it means who does it.
Meeting together. I need a motion, everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes, I need a motion to accept them. Josh, second by Bill,
Yeah.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. We start off here, we've got a presentation on our facade program update by Cassandra Buell, planning director.
So,
I was asked to do a quick recap on our round one, the status of our round one applications, or the awardees for that matter, and then to use that as an introduction to the round two that we have just launched. So, of course, this doesn't work. Doesn't work when it was just working, I swear.
Maybe the battery is.
I bet you, because it was kind of not working for Brian either. Oh, now it's working, okay. So just as a reminder, I'll go through a couple slides to remind everybody what the program was. We set this up using Lewis County ARPA funds directly for facade and streetscape improvements. The facade program is strictly for commercial entities, which also I'd like to put a plug in there for multi-tenant facilities. So if you have apartment buildings in your hamlets or villages that are looking to redo their exterior facade or update their windows or add some awnings, that is an eligible project. So you had all set aside $450,000 of our ARPA funds to be split up in two rounds. The first round funded $250,000 worth of projects. Those awards were made last December 1st. It's a 12-month contract for those awardees to complete the projects, and I'll go through some updates on those. And then the round that we just launched, the second round that we launched on September 2nd, is set to award approximately $200,000, which will certainly not be enough to cover everybody, but it is competitive. So, and there's room for continuing on this program. So again, the projects must be completed in 12 months. They need to be located in a village or a hamlet. And again, it is competitively funded. So it's not a guarantee if somebody submits an application, it is reviewed by a panel. So for facade improvements, like I said, these are commercial buildings, businesses, multi-tenant residential building owners. They must align, very important in my world. We're going to make sure that they align with the local zoning regulations. And then eligible projects, so awnings and canopies, flower boxes, new doors, new paint. The one thing about the paint is that we require a description of what colors you're wanting to paint it. I mean, we don't want a huge complex pattern on there that doesn't comply with local zoning or is a little bit too vibrant for the historical nature of those communities. So
Is lime green included?
no, pistachio green, we did get rid of that in Harrisville. No, definitely not compliant with this program. But even signage like vinyl window decals, entryway improvements for ADA accessibility, those sorts of things. Streetscape improvements, this portion of the funding is strictly available to municipal governments. So it is anything that improves the walkability in those villages or hamlets. So benches, public fixtures like kiosks or plaques, dog waste stations, street trees, permanent landscaping, those types of things would fall under this portion. Ineligible projects, sidewalks typically fall under DOT funding for obvious reasons. They're typically in the right-of-ways, and that's something that we don't want them to do as part of these projects. Roof repair or replacement, we've got a lot of questions about those. There is some circumstances that we can work with based upon the construction and design of the roof. Some roofs come down over the facade. It's just the style of the roof, and they simply look for maybe repainting of the roof because they are metal, and they look pretty bad. So it certainly affects the facade. Parking lots, we don't repave parking lots. We don't expand parking lots. We don't create parking lots for this. And then the engineering and or design costs, we aren't covering that with this one. So our goal is obviously to improve the pedestrian experience and to appeal to downtown areas. We want to beautify the areas. We also want to promote walkability. Some of the benefits, the obvious benefits are business growth and retention, greater spending in local economy, increase for the county, increased property value and sales tax revenue, workforce and residential attraction. I mean, the list could go on and on and on. So the round one launch and the progress, we launched round one last year in November, and we received an overwhelming amount of applications. $487,000 in funds were requested, and again, we only had $250,000 to dish out. So in the end, 17 projects were awarded. A panel of myself, the Lewis County IDA, Lewis County Historical Society, because again, we wanted to preserve the historic nature of our communities. And then Ryan was also a part of the review committee, and that
For
was.
my impeccable taste.
Yes. We'll fund that, was more like an Oprah thing, but.
Yeah, there you go.
So, and we were in that room for a while. I mean, it was a 3-hour process, so we're splitting it up into 2 days this time, because it was a bit much. We were hashing out details we didn't think were going to be, so important, but in the end, they turned out to be really important, so. So again, last December, we awarded those 17 projects, and an update as of today, 10 of the 17 projects have been completed. 3 projects are to be completed this month, 3 projects by November, which is the end of the contract date, and then there's 1 project that we foresee an extension request for. So what were some of the projects? So again, municipalities, they have access to what's called streetscape funds. And so their project scope was to remove and replace the unsafe decking structure, which you can see in the background. I included all of the previous pictures. The 4 pictures are in the background, the after pictures are in the forefront. So you can see that it needed a lot of TLC, and the finished product is great. I recommend anybody taking a walk out there and enjoying that scenery. It does look really, really great. And they replaced and restained that wood decking and the stairs along the basin canal deck. And the next one was the Pistachio Green Bonaparte Pharmacy in the hamlet of Harrisville. So this is why we have rules on what paint color you are allowed to use. They were awarded a Facade grant, an amount of $13,000. It's amazing what you can do with such little money. But they primed and painted and they repaired some of the windows in the front. And he was very thankful. He put out a very nice message to everybody involved.
And actually, he used the money that you just sent him recently. He's replaced his doors.
Wonderful.
Too.
Wonderful. That's great. Actually, that was something I'm like, oh, he would have just replaced those doors. It really would have set it off. So it looks like
it did good.
Good.
Yeah, they were very old.
Good. This project was in Lions Falls, the village of Lions Falls. She received, her request was very small. She just wanted to, she leases this space, so she obviously couldn't take on the painting, which really would have set it off. But she leased the space and she really wanted to put a sign out there and then sprucing it up even further, putting some handcrafted flower boxes in the windows. So for $606, that's 75% of the cost of the project, mind you, but she was able to get the vinyl decals for the door window and the new sign, as you can see, and then the flower boxes. The Town of Diana Historical Museum, they did some improvements to the paint, the priming and the paint of this building. This is across from Trackside, if you're looking for an area, but we all know where Trackside is, right? So priming and painting of the building exterior and the roof awning. And next was Chuck's Market. The Facade award was for about $15,000, and they repainted that. You can see in the background, I know it's faded, but it needed a lot of TLC. The paint was chipping, the trim was chipping, the windows needed a lot of help. So they replaced 9 windows on the street side, which is 2 sides of the building. And then they repaired the awning lights and installed some additional signage. Robert Hazard, this is, for those of you in the area, this is the old Key Bank building in the village of Croghan. Right now, it is actually a ballet studio, which is, it's a new development since this funding was awarded. But the window, if any of you are familiar where the ATM was replaced, and So for $1,500, we were able to complete the brick repointing and fill that hole in the vestibule area with the window.
Are you doing the ballet?
No. And it's on 4 o'clock. My daughter fits into the 4 o'clock on Monday schedule, which does not fit with my schedule, so. Good Old Wishies is probably one of the larger projects that we awarded. And certainly if you drive through the village of Krogan, everybody stops there. So the scope was to repair, they had a pretty extensive scope of work. They were repairing and placing just about everything in the front. But as you can see, the windows are vibrant and brand spanking new custom windows. The areas in front of the windows for the displays, the good old spoke area of the building were replaced, LED lighting, signage for the bike shop, you name it, and it had a facelift. So they've been very thankful for all of the funding that's been sent their way for this project, and they've been on top of it.
And it looks amazing.
And it does look amazing. I mean, it didn't look bad before, but you don't realize how bad it looked before. I mean, especially the windows, they look great. So round 2 launch. Again, this round has $200,000 in funding available. Application, we are more than happy to help with those applications. You can call our office, we can walk them through their eligibility. Anything, we can help them put it together. If they send it to us, we will walk them through what's missing, what's needed. And then also we highly recommend that they consult, if they have a historical building, if they consult with the Lewis County Historical Society, because they have a huge role in the review of these projects and for good reason. They've helped us really pinpoint, do we really want to be slapping a Band-Aid on this building, or do we want to do it the right way and promote it being done the right way? So they've been really helpful. And then round 1 winners, just to know, are ineligible for round 2 funding, because how would that be fair for the rest of everybody if we were funding projects that were already funded the first time? So the timeline, prepare those applications, start preparation on September 2nd. Sponsors should prepare those applications for yesterday, really, because contractors, we require at least 2 quotes from contractors, and that's half the battle right there. Applications are due on November 4th. And then we will move into the review phase where we schedule 2 days this time to review the full extent of all the details of the project. And we really do hash it out. I mean, we're not throwing blood, but it's close, right? Between the IDA and the Historical Society, it's quite the battle sometimes. We all want funding for certain projects, so. And then the awards will be announced on December 2nd. Then the hard work begins with the contracts, right, Joan? Yep. Then we're all back to that cycle.
So have you had many people inquiring?
Yes. I believe that the town of West Leiden is interested in some streetscape improvements along waterfront, I believe. I wasn't involved in those site visits, but that's what I understand. There's 2 projects in the village of Krogan that were actively looking for this funding after the last time. I think the problem with the last the last round was that they didn't believe it until they saw it, and then they were like, oh my gosh, like, look at what they did. And there's not a lot of strings attached. We just ask for monthly updates, and they've been really great. We include those updates in our reports every month for you guys. But other than that, the feedback has been great. It's a pretty easy, it's low-hanging fruit kind of thing, and as long as they're willing to put in the work.
I think it's a great program.
Yeah, so
Really helped our area.
everybody has really loved it, and so we hope that momentum we already have a couple big projects in the village of Laurel that have connected with us and want to work on that, so. Yeah.
Any other questions? John, if I cannot, thank you.
Oh.
One thing, one of the slides that pedestrian walkway.
Yes.
Streetscape.
Yes.
And the other slide had sidewalks are, just wondered why, is it just too hard to control?
Sidewalks are typically within right-of-ways of DOT or the town So we do, and that's typical, even New York Main Street funding doesn't cover sidewalks.
I just wondered, John, that.
Yep. So like trails, when we say pedestrian walkways, like trails or like the basin entrance, the stairway entrance down to the basin, those types of.
I was thinking of safety, but.
That too, lighting or benches or.
Good.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else, thank you very much.
Maybe clicker back.
Next, we're supposed to have a 2023 personnel recommendation from Ryan. He's already gone over 15 minutes on his previous talk, so he's on time.
I don't think I spoke for more than,
Ryan, do you want the lights on?
You know? it was so good.
Sorry.
But,
So traditionally, kind of the way we've been doing budget lately is I try to give you some of the big cornerstones in September so that when you get to the main presentation in October, a lot of the bigger stuff is locked in already. And then the budget lands on your desk in November. So next year will be an election year for our department head elected officials. Caitlin has put together a great little sheet here, including the policy language that this board has adopted. So we do have an exempt employee compensation policy adopted in 2020. And basically what we said in that policy was we want to make sure that we're very clear in broadcasting and setting the salary for elected officials before people decide whether they're going to run or declare whether they're going to run or not. So we have 3 department heads who are elected officials, and we have 2 elections commissioners who are appointed by the political parties who have also been put in this salary category. So you'll see, basically what I've put forward here is just to follow the COLA cost of living adjustment that is given to all the other employees at 2.5% from 2022 to 2023. So you can see the 2022 salaries on the left, 2023 salaries on the right. But we need to adopt and post these. People will start asking for petitions and filing as soon as January and February. So as long as it's adopted in the budget, that is considered adopted for our purposes. But I wanted to make special effort to point that out this year because we're going into an election next year. These folks are not eligible, according to the exempt employee compensation policy. They are not eligible for step increases, so they only receive cost of living. So whatever the union agrees on for cost of living is what these positions receive for cost of living each year. So since the last time we've talked about this in 2020, going into 2024, these positions have received those cost of living updates every year. So that's how we've gone about it. But I wanted a chance to put that in front of the board, and this is an opportunity to make any adjustments either. So if there's any input or any thing that you guys think needs to be adjusted, we need to do that now before we have candidates announced in January and February. So that's the first thing. If there's no thoughts, discussion, that 2023 number is likely what will be put in the budget.
And that's just 2.5%.
From the previous year, yes. But you have to remember, the other department heads and union, so union department heads and management confidential employees also receive a step. So these elected department heads do not receive steps. So their salary doesn't grow at quite the same rate.
Sounds self-serving, but legislators too.
Correct. Yeah, yours has only gone up since 2020 the same rate of.
But and with what you're saying about people wanting to run, they should know what it would be too.
Yes. Well, and yeah, the legislator, I guess I didn't include that in there, but it's the same, it's 2.5% from what we had last year, is what I'm planning to do. Okay. Now we'll get into the department requests. This is the same spreadsheet now that you've seen for 3 or 4 years, I believe. Actually, I think it's the 4th year that we've used this format, so hopefully it should be familiar. I know there's a lot of information here, but it shouldn't be too confusing, I hope. What I've done here is I've compiled all the department head requests that came in during the budget process. Caitlin and the treasurer's office has helped us to apply costs to those requests. And from there, I have made recommendations on what I think should be included in the budget. But this is our opportunity to discuss it as a group. I don't have extra, sorry. So I'll run through these one by one and we can discuss. As you can see, the total requested amount was $516,000 increase in wages and fringes. That equates to about 3.4% of our total payroll. What I'm recommending is only 183 or 1.2%. So we can't do everything that is requested of us. I like that we have a system where department heads feel comfortable requesting things and advocating for, their departments, but they have to understand, which I believe they do, that we can't do everything. So, with that said, we'll jump in here. I would just add that the additional 2022 cost wages and fringes. For fringe, we don't know necessarily each employee, so we just take the wage and times it by 1.3. So add 30% to give wages and fringes. So, okay, first, buildings and grounds, upgrade cleaners to custodial workers. There's 3 full-time cleaners, 2 part-time cleaners, and 2 substitute cleaners. As we mentioned before in the General Services Committee, this was a CSEA request. So I am also recommending that we include this in the 2022 budget. The question is simply, do we, adopt that in at the October board meeting, and by the time we make the change, it'll be November, and they'll have 1 month instead of starting in January. But anyways, I do recommend that we move forward with that, and it's the board's decision whether you want to do that for October or just wait till January. Because we're upgrading the custodial workers, we also need to upgrade their supervisor from custodial worker to senior custodial worker. So I'm recommending that we make that change as well. In the highway department, Tim has requested that we abolish the account clerk. You will recall that we kind of reshuffled the financial office in the highway department, and Tim feels comfortable with the folks that he has there now, that he doesn't need that additional account clerk position. Instead, we'd like to move that position to the road. So a lot of Tim's philosophy from day one here has been get more people on the road. So we talked about less mechanics, we're down 3 mechanics. Now we're gonna be down 1 fiscal person, and all those resources have been applied to road maintenance, which is the main goal of the highway department. So I think that's a common sense.
So does that mean a person's losing their job?
No. We have an anticipated vacancy. Let's see, human resources. We're gonna, what I would like to do is abolish the position of administrative assistant. We have gone through several iterations of this administrative assistant position. You may recall that it's split between human resources and Pat Freilich's office. It's 70-30, human resources and community services. Try as we might, we've gone through 3 of these positions in the last 4 years. So we're kind of ready to give up on that arrangement. We'd like to create a new position, the human resource specialist, that really is a more capable position. Caitlin and I talked, we call it a kind of like a deputy, you know, that can do more human resources type activities, but department that size doesn't really need a deputy. So human resource specialist is what we settled on, and hopefully it's somebody that can do you know, more than just administrative work. So a new position, which is actually not a new position, it's just we'd like to move the benefits specialist that's in the treasurer's office, move that to the human resources office.
Will there still be a shared,
Pat has been able to make things work with what she has for now, so. So we're requesting to basically just move the benefits specialist, which already exists, from treasurer to human resources. It's pretty common to have human resources manage the benefits for an organization, and so we'd like to make that change official in the 2023 budget. For the IT department, there's a request to upgrade computer assistant to LAN administrator. I am recommending that we move forward with that. We've got some, you know, opportunity for additional leadership and some growth in careers for those folks, and so we'll be able to offer that. For planning department, we will have a retirement of the senior keyboard specialist anticipated shortly by the end of the year. And so we'd like to eliminate the position of senior keyboard specialist. I've been on a mission since I got here to eliminate all titles with the word keyboard or typist. And we're not that those folks, that they've been wonderful, excellent employees, it's just that phrasing doesn't really fit, you know, the modern day workforce. So we'd like to replace that with an administrative assistant. So basically saying, you know, very similar duties, just different title. For recreation, forestry, and parks, a new position, administrative assistant. And the reason that we have to do that is because we are going to be moving the OHV permit administration program to recreation, forestry, and parks. There's a long history of the permit program, which I'd be happy to get into with somebody who has some time, but more or less, we kind of convinced Jake when he first started to take it under his wing. But the reality is it takes a lot of work. It's very detailed, and it really needs to be under Jackie, who understands the needs of the clubs and can communicate with businesses and the trails, you know, the property owners that host the trails. And I think that ultimately makes the most sense. So we'll have somebody that will handle those permit applications.
so that's gonna be the work is gonna be shifted from the clerk to this,
Yes.
with no loss of a position in the clerk's office.
Well,
It doesn't, well,
sort of.
according to what this is.
Correct. However, we are actually at net zero because we lost someone in the clerk's office back in 2019, and we did not replace that person. And the deal was if they took permits, we'd replace that person. So kind of we gave them the same amount of people they had with more duties when Jake started in 2020. And so really, we're kind of just moving those duties. They've always had 3 people in the clerk's office. They went down to 2, and then we said, in order to get back your 3rd, you have to take on permits.
And I'm only asking for information on
Yeah, no, I get you. So that's what I mean. And before that, the permits were done at the Chamber of Commerce. So, you know, we really, I think the ultimate solution is to take this in-house under Jackie, who has all the details of the program and can handle it. So, Jackie has also requested to add internship hours during winter break. That's really a very small cost to us, but there's some great workers that have worked for us in the summer, and they'd like to come back during off hours, and we've never really had any hours available to them. So we'd like to give them some hours and to chip in. So very low cost to us. And then there's a request to upgrade 1 crew member to crew foreman. Again, it's seasonal, very low cost to the county. But the thought here is that we'll really be able to have two crews all summer long. So we added some seasonal positions last year that made Jackie's crew up to, I believe, 7. And so now they'll be able to split up and go 2 different directions with 2 different crews without anybody working out of tight. So again, pretty low cost to the county for that. The sheriff would like to upgrade the jail nurse from 35 to 40 hours a week. Part of that is the medication assisted treatment that Pat has been talking about, that we're gonna have to start offering at the jail. And additionally, for responsibilities and retention, we have someone that's pretty good in that position right now. We need to retain them, and the market for nurses is getting tighter and tighter. And so the reality is, she's there working through lunch anyway. So we're looking to recognize that. A new position for the sheriff would be road patrol deputy. That's only a half-year position. Basically, we have a retirement coming up in 2023. And if we waited to replace that person who's retiring when they retire, then we would be down for 6 months as the new person went off to the academy and got trained. So we'd like to give them permission to get that person hired off to the academy so that when the retirement happens, the new person's ready to go without having a vacancy in the department during those months. So it technically is a new position, but once they get in and get going, we'll abolish the additional position. They won't see a gap in coverage, basically. The sheriff is, let's see, where are we? Road patrol deputy, new position. So Josh had talked earlier about the work that Cheryl does with, the highway departments. Right now, Cheryl Lalonde has a job that is twofold. She's the dispatch supervisor. She does all the scheduling, administration, discipline, basically, of the dispatch unit, as well as all of the 911 infrastructure, the grants, the towers, the capital projects. And so Cheryl's looking to retire, and we fully recognize her that we probably can't replace her with one person. We probably need to replace her with 2 people. So what I'd like to do is create a new position called part-time 911 infrastructure coordinator. That would allow Cheryl to stay on and do the part of her job that we, especially need her to do, which is manage the grants and manage the infrastructure. We recognize Cheryl's not going to be working for the county forever, but at least this gives us an opportunity to hopefully get some more people trained up and have a better succession plan, because that infrastructure is very important and it's very complicated, and there's really no one in the county who's taken the time to learn very much about it. I would say besides Cheryl, Jerry King probably knows the most about it. So we need to, I would like to keep her on part-time to continue to manage that aspect.
What's part-time?
She'll be retired, so the max that she can earn from the county is $35,000.
How many hours would you anticipate?
I was gonna make it a salary part-time, just 35, I don't know.
We would need to work that out. We're working on updating the job spec and what that would entail. If we take out all the other duties she's doing, what would this job really look like, so that we could get a picture
So
from
it's up
her?
in the air at the moment.
A little bit.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm just
we're still kind of figuring it out as we
If
take
she's
steps in the right direction.
retiring, wouldn't it be better to hire somebody new and train them to do it? So we're not constantly relying on somebody that's retiring up in the air all the time. Why would we hire a new person that's knowledgeable in grants, even though out of college, and hire somebody new to do that?
It's a very good question. Because Cheryl's retiring in December, and we need, what's that?
This December?
Yes. And we need to keep her on, at least we don't have time to train somebody between now and December. But I agree, I think in the long run, that needs to be a full-time position, and we need to have, somebody that can learn from Cheryl. She's happy to do this for a few more years, and at least
Right,
for
but it's like,
kicking the can down the road.
right, I mean, I would think we've got, that's why I've always kind of wondered is because there's a lot of grants involved with this 911 and all that whole emergency management section up there. Would it be better if it fell under, if we're getting a grant specialist to fall under where we're specializing in grants?
Would it make sense to utilize Cheryl for as long as she is willing to do so, but give us like a 6-month notice before she's ready to quit, and then we could hire a new full-time person and they could train underneath her for.
Well, I'm saying have her, she's retiring, retain her for 6 months to train this new person.
And then let Cheryl go.
Right.
So there are politics and personalities at play with this situation, which we can talk more about in executive session. But we've thought of a lot of different options, and I can explain in a little more detail. You know, I don't want to talk about specific individuals. In terms of the county and the positions and the organizational chart that makes the most sense, I agree completely. But we've got some other things to consider. So, which we can have a more robust discussion, but that's kind of why we landed on this for the moment. But I agree with you, it's not a very good long-term solution. So what I'm pitching is we would eliminate the 911's operations coordinator, that's Cheryl's position now, create the part-time 911 infrastructure coordinator, and then have a new position, which would be dispatch supervisor, which would just have the dispatch supervision duties. Another request is this is a similar request that the sheriff has had for many years for additional road patrol deputies, which at this point, unless the feedback or stance of the board is different, I'm not prepared to recommend that in the budget. Solid waste, there was a request to increase 3 MEOs to 3 HEOs, so it would be a great increase for those 3 employees. We're not prepared to make that recommendation at this point. My recommendation is no on that. We have MEOs and HEOs all across our county departments. We have them at Recreation and Trails. We have them at the Highway Department, and simply moving 3 employees up, who we know are excellent equipment operators, but we really shouldn't do that when we have other departments that have similar titles. So I will not be recommending that in the 2023 budget. Treasurer, Eric's looking for some shifting of his team. So first of all, the benefits specialist is going to be moved. So we're not really abolishing, we're just moving it to human resources. Eric would like to upgrade the account clerk to senior account clerk, upgrade a senior account clerk to principal, and then replace the benefits specialist with an additional account clerk. The thought process behind the upgrades is that those folks in the treasurer's office are often, even though they're senior account clerks, they're often working with fiscal managers. They are, often the one that tells them how to do things, how to put things into munis, and they have additional responsibilities beyond, what a typical senior account clerk would be. So recognize kind of the treasurer's special role as the financial hub of the county, and the cost difference is really minimal for that.
I'd also just like to add that with the benefit specialist coming out, a lot of that work will remain the same, but there are duties that our benefit specialist does that are specific to the treasurer's department that need to be handed off to these individuals that she won't do in that aspect. So in handing off those duties, it will create those positions needing to be a little bit higher as well.
And you would be adding positions,
Yes, it would be a position of account clerk, yeah.
Because also that position of account clerk, when you take positions like the administrative assistant that myself and Pat shared, they could be doing the accounting aspects of that for Pat or myself or any other small departments where an administrative assistant was entering into Munis and doing those types of things. They could do that portion down there as well and start helping with that.
Well, I'm actually not sure I'm prepared to recommend that additional position yet. But I still need to have some more conversations with Eric on kind of where he wants to take this. And then the final is a per diem principal account clerk. This is an idea Patty and I had years ago, and we just kept forgetting to put it in the budget. But we always have vacancies in our accounting somewhere in our organization. And when we do, we end up, we've got a couple of retirees that have come back and plugged in for different departments. And we always have to come to the board and create a temporary position. And I'd love to just have something, very small, for just $5,000, which is not a lot of hours, for folks that when we have a vacancy and we can't find anybody, we can keep the train moving. With one of them is Paula Kaufman, who comes in and has worked for us, has done an awesome job, and supervisor as well. So just they plug in for a few weeks while we've got vacancies and make sure we can pay our bills. So I just like that to be recognized in the budget rather than having to come to the board every time we do that.
I would contest your statement about you forgetting to put something in the budget, because you put a lot in the budget.
Well, as long as we keep the taxes the same.
There you go, that's an admit.
So total requested is only a 1.2% increase in payroll. We have about 300 employees at the county, so it's not unusual that we want to move things around, particularly when we have vacancies and anticipate vacancies. So.
Well, could you give us a column of what you're suggesting?
You got it. Manager recommended.
But you,
It's all of them.
oh, okay, there's the no, I got you.
It's all yes.
It's all yes, but three.
Yes.
Okay.
How many vacancies does the sheriff have right now?
How many vacancies does the sheriff have right now?
Right now, the only vacancies the sheriff for the road has is for part-time positions. All of the full-time positions are full. We have no part-time employees that can bump up into full-time roles. And then for corrections, we have one opening in a corporal position. And then with a test upcoming, and then we have two openings, one full-time and one part-time dispatcher right now. So total, the part-time amount for road patrol, 3 to 4 there, but then one CO and 2 dispatch. So.
I was just looking at the road patrol. The vacancies.
Sound good? Throw something in. So I do think that we need to have a serious discussion, or we can have a discussion about increasing the number of full-time road patrol deputies. But I also think that I would like to see more information about why he wants to add more people and what impact he thinks that's gonna have in the community. And then also how we can come to some understanding about our desire to see more police resources put toward recreation patrol and his desire to see more police officers put on the roads. I wanna keep that discussion open and going. I'm just gonna, I'm throwing a giant rotten skunk on the table by doing that, but that's the biggest request we get, and that's the biggest request we're denying also. But we're making changes, with the way that we do recreation patrol, and need to be open to having that discussion. But, yeah. I know, Ryan, do we have anything new, in terms of, in a perfect world, we'd have arrest records. We know how many tickets are being issued. We know where the crime spots are in the county. Why do we need 4 more deputies? More than just public safety. We all support public safety, but we hold the purse strings, and we have to go back to our voters and say, this is why you're looking at, $50,000 more in your tax expenditures than you did the year before. That's my mindset.
I haven't received any additional, documentation for, during the budget request. I've had similar discussions with the sheriff and he says, well, we've got all of that and we've provided a lot of it.
Some of us are newer than others, though. And sometimes they're relying on things from decades past, so.
Well, do you see a need for more road patrol out there?
No.
So.
There was a
I'm open to being convinced I'm wrong, but no, I don't see any need for it.
There was a log truck rolled over just before my lawn. 2 officers were there from the sheriff's department. And I don't know, an hour later, another officer came along to park and visit and see what was going on and stayed the whole time. So that meant 3 patrol cars on Pine Grove Road in that 4.5 hour span. Why? I don't understand why. The fire department was there, sorry.
No, I was just saying, at 70 you're in a position, you must be in court full-time.
There was a lot of help there, so why 3 officers?
Well, we can talk more about that.
I'm just throwing it out as an invitation, to the sheriff as much as anybody else. We can talk about it. Let's get some information.
Yeah, I mean, if he came in here with a plan of how he was going to patrol a wreck and numbers to support it, but we don't have that.
But wasn't we told that Jackie had those numbers? Jackie says, yeah, I've got those. Remember? We asked for them, came back and she had them.
She is getting reports,
But
and
we never get them.
she would be happy to share.
Yeah, but we keep asking for them and we don't.
I
She
asked-
should provide
So,
them.
first off, they're very sporadic. They don't come on a regular basis. And I do have to say or feel, I think, that the trail coverage is better under the current deputy management than it has been in the past. Previous to this crew here, we had less.
You're not gonna believe this, but I got a spreadsheet I'll share with you.
I'm sure.
And I'm sure, Jeff, this isn't necessarily a request for, well, it's not a request for recreation. He wants more
Oh,
deputies.
I understand.
But that's where I'm saying, I wanna see what impact is that gonna make? Are we gonna, is our crime, well, we have a low crime rate in the county, which we should be thankful for. Right, and there's a lot of credit due to the deputies to keep us safe, but is adding 4 deputies gonna bring it down more? Where are they gonna be used? Where is the need?
And my thought is if we're short deputies or part-times or whatever, maybe if we had 1, it would help fill those vacancies. If we've got vacancies. That's why I asked about the vacancies.
Right, so for that road, like for those road patrol, the part-time ones, we just shifted all of our part-time ones up. We had a retirement this year, which was a trickle up, and then we created the SRO position additional, so that was a backfill, that was a shift of part-time positions up. They are working through the civil service list. They do have a list that they're going through. We're doing physicals this weekend for part-time ones that, just working through that process, so they are actively recruiting for those part-time positions. They do have, like I said, a list for that role, not the others, corrections or dispatch, but for road, they do have a list, so we're working through it.
Thank you.
So in terms of what I've received from the sheriff regarding this request is, it's always a verbal request during our budget meeting. So there's not a lot that comes with it, but I feel obligated to reflect what was requested and what I bring forward. So
He just comes in and says, I want 4 more road patrol, period. There's no documentation to back it up. They just-
we have a very good discussion usually about it, but there's not,
Maybe it's always just keep asking.
How many part-time deputy positions do we have open right now?
3, so you guys have given him the ability to hire as needed, but, to support rec and everything, but for the road, we have 3 open.
But you're in the process, so.
Like I said, they're in the process of going through the system. Hopefully we'll have a couple here coming on. So once they get through, but then once we hire them, they have to go to that 6-month academy, so it takes time for sure with that
And you
group.
said they anticipate they then will be promoted. It's a stepping stone to a full-time.
Well, that's, I think, we have this potential more retirees coming up and things like that, so. Never say for sure, but.
So I'm not looking for a motion or anything, just a heads up of, this is kind of where we're headed with budget. Once we kind of talked about this, we talked about capital, that's really the two cornerstones of putting a budget together. So I try to get those in front of you guys early, give you some opportunity for input. Next month at this committee meeting will be the main budget presentation. So by then we'll have everything in place.
Any other questions or comments for Ryan right now? If not, we'll move along. Scott.
The first docket is introductory local law number 5-2022, a local law providing for one-time employee retention incentive payment for certain exempt appointed employees and setting the public hearing for November 1st, 2022 at 5:00 p.m.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing renewal agreement between Lewis County Clerk and Info Quick Solutions for computer services for a term of January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2027 at a monthly cost of $3,620.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing 1-year renewal agreement between the County of Lewis and ICU Security and Private Investigations for unarmed security guard services at the Department of Motor Vehicles building for the term of January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023 at a cost not to exceed $33.50 per hour for 37.5 hours per week.
Questions or comments?
I have a question on this. Obviously, it started before my time. I've seen it, and I've had people ask me, why do we have guards at the EMB?
Jake, John.
Two things. One, it's a presence job, right? I'm sorry, I was figuring out. It's a presence at DMV because most everybody comes to DMV, they don't necessarily like being at DMV. So it's a presence and a layer of protection so that people treat themselves and act accordingly when entering a government building. Okay. A lot of times we deal with the same clientele as what the social services building will deal with. And up there they have an armed security guard. We have an unarmed security guard at DMV. And also I included it in the budget this year because with the project and everything, we're going to be adding yet another department down at the DMV building. So even though it's coming out of my budget, I am supplying the security guard for both buildings. It's to kind of fall in line with everything else. I mean, even though we have the courts here, we have security in this building, we have security at the DSS, and I'm proposing we have security at DMV because we deemed in this building at DSS and intermittently even at the hospital that our employees are worth to have the security protection, and it should carry over with the DMV employees also.
And you did have some issues, right?
Yes, we do. I mean, it depends, I mean, we've not within the last month, but I mean, earlier summer, still police are called because people can't behave appropriately.
I meant prior to having.
And prior to that, we had quite a few issues. I mean, the staff do have panic buttons. I do plan on keeping that. But a lot of times the response from either village, county, or state police, it's not any fault of their own, but a lot of times the response is anywhere between 4 and 7 minutes, and a lot can go on in the building in 4 to 7 minutes while we are waiting for
law enforcement comes. So the security guard there, they are able to manage the building. The security guard we have, he's actually pretty good that he is willing to even work a little bit out of his scope of contract where we have taught him paperwork and everything else. So a lot of times when he comes in the building, he asks the people right away if they've taken the number. He'll ask them what transaction they want to do, and he gets them lined up with the appropriate paperwork that they need to do.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Well, it started with the pandemic, didn't it? When the
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
the
yeah.
frustration level was
Yep,
high.
it started with the pandemic with an increase of customers being frustrated and everything else. And I was really hoping, like, coming out of the pandemic, people would kind of snap around. But I mean, if anybody's worked customer service, I mean, pre-pandemic and especially post-pandemic, people, customer service is not a great thing necessarily to do all the time. I mean, people seem to be more on edge lately, more to not to be told the word no. And unfortunately, in the DMV, we have a little wiggle room down there, but ultimately it is the examiner's job to either accept a document or not accept a document. And unfortunately, some of our residents can't handle the word no, and they don't act appropriately when you tell them no.
Thank you. Anything else? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing agreement with NA Pulse Consulting, Inc. for cybersecurity policy consulting services at a cost of up to $14,555 based upon hourly time and material charges of $205.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, aye? Opposed?
I don't know.
Carried.
I can't remember, I'm sorry.
Appointing legislator Jessica Mosher of Carthage as the board's representative on the Lewis County Industrial Development Agency Board of Directors due to the vacancy left by legislator Ronald Burns.
Any questions or comments?
I just want to say, I live in Denmark. Carthage is my mailing address. It's technically Denmark. And this one I'm going to abstain from.
I will make that change.
Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
I didn't know where you live.
Opposed?
Sometimes it gets confusing with the Carthage thing, but.
Carried.
Adopting local law number 5-2022, a local law to amend local law number 5 of the year 2012, County of Lewis, in relation to the implementation of reapportionment within the County of Lewis.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing agreement between Lewis County and New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation to provide round 3 reimbursement funds for eligible septic and cesspool replacement projects in Lewis County.
Questions or comments? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Carried.
Authorizing agreement between the County of Lewis and SHI International for programming services relative to a Lewis County public transportation presence on the transit app for a term of December 1st, 2022 through November 30th, 2025 at a cost not to exceed $55,732.10.
Questions or comments?
I would just say this is not our app. This is, allows us to get out and have access to other transportation apps.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carried.
Updated designation of depositories, adding Carthage Federal Savings and Loan Association.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. We have no motions. Anybody have anything else? If not, we'll entertain a motion for executive session.
And just for the record, that's for, to discuss particular personnel.
Bill made the motion, and a second. Jeff? All in favor? Aye. And we are going into executive session.
You guys want to roll right into it or a quick break?
A few minutes break, maybe.